Morning. Call this meeting to order. It is Wednesday, February 6th at 9 a.m. We've changed the structure of the way we do meetings now. What we do is our recorder does a morning roll call. But first I would like to mention something. As an honor to our military and everyone that does service to our nation, it is customary that we keep the American flag on the left side of all meetings, or the right side of all meetings, and the state flag on the left side of all meetings. So we've changed that in here in case any of you were wondering why it is an honor to all of our military, and it is a custom in the United States. So if you would all please rise and give the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Mr. Jesuit, roll call, please.
Chairman Pash.
Present.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Present.
Commissioner Gold.
Here.
Director of County Operations Schmelzer. And Acting County Councilor, Interim County Council, Cudleth McKinsey. Shayla.
Welcome.
All right, so we have any changes or amendments to the agenda? Commissioner Gold.
I would like to propose a change that the Curry Public Transit Service District, that would be 4B, go to before public comments right after number 2, because this individual has to be over in Medford for an appointment. And I don't know how long the public comments are going to last.
That's fine with me.
Okay, I have no objection to that either. So we're going to move 4B to
Call it 2A.
2A. Okay. Any other amendments to the agenda?
One correction, Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Boyce?
Action item 6F, Wildlands Act, Jackson County Resolution. That's actually a Commissioner Boyce resolution, request to the board, and that was the article that got into the Eugene Register-Guard newspaper about a month ago.
Okay, so noted.
And
you said one.
Did I?
Go ahead.
I deserve to be limited. Just on public comments, similar to our public transit presentation, we have some people who have traveled quite a ways, quite a distance, and so you might want to, if you haven't already done that.
There's no clock today so far.
But let them go first, perhaps, Mr. Chair.
Oh, I see.
They're from out of the area, out of the town. Just say yes. No.
So you're talking about what?
On public comment periods, I'd see you have quite a stack there.
Right.
I think it's you might want to recognize those that have traveled the greatest distance, if that's possible.
Okay. All right. Well, I only have actually one public comment on here with nothing, with no item attached to it. So we'll look to move some of that forward. I agree. So can I get a motion?
I make the motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Do I have a second?
Second, Mr. Chair.
The question?
Aye.
Oh, no.
Aye.
You're supposed to call it.
Mr. Jesuit, roll. We'll get it. It's okay.
Chairman Pash.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
All right, we're going to move on to public comments.
There are some extra chairs, gentlemen, you might want to bring in from outside, just right in the hallway, and we can squeeze you in here, I hope.
Or if we have overfill, we can use the hallway. We turn the speakers on in the hallway if we have to. So.
Good thinking on that.
Pardon? Right. We're going to do yes, we are going to go to 2A, which is going to be the presentation for the CPTSD, Curry County Public Transit Service District, before the public comments. I'm corrected.
And here's some handouts relative to that.
Thank you very much for putting me on first. I appreciate it. I have a long drive ahead of me. My name is Kathy Bernhardt, and I appreciate talking to you today. I'm the General Manager of Curry Public Transit, and today I'm here to present our biannual budget to the Commissioners. But I'd like to preface this with a bit of an explanation of who we are, because I know Mr. Pash of the three doesn't know. So Curry Public Transit is a vendor, a pass-through vendor of the county. And the way that this works is that Curry Public Transit runs a bus service in Curry County and up through Coos and down into Del Norte. We have a fleet of 12 vehicles. Most of them are housed in Brookings. We run a Coastal Express 3 times a day, 5 days a week, that runs up and down between Smith River and North Bend. And we also run Dial-A-Ride in Brookings and in Gold Beach, and we do medical transportation under contract. Curry County contracts with Curry Public Transit contracts with Curry County. Curry County receives all of the funding and passes it through to Curry Public Transit. They own all of the rolling stock, which is all of our buses and vans. They sign all the grant agreements, and they approve all the funding reimbursement requests. So today I'm here to present to you what we're going to be receiving in the different grants that we apply for. The first one is called 5310, Enhanced Mobility of Seniors and Individuals with Disabilities. And for the 2019 to 21, it's $216,037. That operates our Dial-A-Ride. We have to provide a 10.27 local match, and Curry Public Transit provides all that match money of $24,726. The second grant is 5311. It's a formula grant for rural areas. And we split that into 2. It's operations and administration. The operations for 1921 is $348,765. That is a 43.92% local match, which means Curry Public Transit has to come up with $273,141. And the administration part of that is $40,379 for the 2 years, with a 10.27% match of $4,622. Then we also have a 5339 bus and facilities grant that we won last year. That is to replace 1 bus and 1 van. That's $131,000, and we provide the 15% match of $19,650. Through the state government, we have the Special Transportation Fund that is designated for seniors and those with disabilities. The net for this year is for the next 2 years is $135,400. That requires no match, so we use that as match. We also have a new fund called STIF, or Statewide Transportation Improvement Fund, and that's funded through a payroll tax. It's brand new this year, and this year it's designated only for improvements. That is $459,000 with no match, so that provides our match for the other 2. And then the third one is the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program, which we won a year ago, and that's going to provide 2 buses and 1 van for $280,000 with a 10.27 local match of $32,047. So that's our budget for the next 2 years. The second page of this is, it tells you what we're going to be doing for improvements. This is the first time in transit history that they've actually funded us through a tax, and we can actually improve our services. So what we plan to do starting mid-May this year is extend the Brookings Dial-A-Ride hours, extend the Gold Beach hours 1 day a week, and add a run from Gold Beach to Brookings 1 day a week so that people can catch the bus that goes on to Medford. We're also adding Coastal Express on Saturdays and Dial-A-Ride in Brookings on Saturdays. And then we're increasing our payroll so that we can attract more people to apply for bus drivers' jobs. So we're raising the minimum that we hire at. And then we're increasing our marketing and promotion funding. So if you look on the back of that, the second part of that is called 130% projects. If Curry County collects more taxes than anticipated, these are the three projects that we will try to put on if we get more money than anticipated. So I'm hoping that jobs are abundant in Curry County so we can do them. And that's add another Coastal Express from Gold Beach to Brookings 2 to 3 days, extend the Gold Beach Dial Ride on the same days, and do a savings plan for our building. Okay.
I have a couple of questions.
Yes.
I've been approached about the Dial-A-Rides program, and I noticed that we don't have any up into Port Orford.
That's correct.
We've got a lot of seniors up in Port Orford that are having some real problems right now, health-wise, and being able to get around, and I'd like to know why we can't extend that program up into Port Orford.
We have an advisory committee that advises us on how to spend this money, the STF and STIF, and that did come up during the advisory committee, but it was decided that for this biennium we would not do that unless we had extra money. That is something that's been on my mind for a long time. But the last time we did a Port Orford Dial-A-Ride, it was through a volunteer program, and they had maybe 3 riders a day, and they figured that even with a volunteer program it wasn't paying its way. If we could get more advertising out into Port Orford and let them know that we exist, we can certainly add that Dial-A-Ride over there. That is one of my priorities in the future.
I would certainly like to see if we can squeeze the lemon a little tighter here and add that into Port Orford, possibly by getting with the mayor or the city council up there and figuring out a strategy for that. But I think it's imperative that everyone in this county have an opportunity to be able to get services, and with some people's extremely limited budgets, I think it's something that we need to find a way to offer.
Right. Well, we do have a contingency fund in the STIF, and that certainly could be spent on that.
I would certainly appreciate your board looking at that, the advisory
Absolutely.
board looking at that.
Yeah.
Mr. Boyce?
Thank you for bringing that up. I've heard from some friends in Port Orford, and I know, you've referenced that, and that's been on your program to increase that, and maybe the need now would justify more than the time period when it was only 3 at a time. And we need to give you all the support, just like their law enforcement up there, their city police department, and so yeah, I know that's been something. And yes, sometimes the Port Orford folks, they feel like they're getting left and lost, and so we got to keep working that direction.
We do have the Coastal Express that goes through Port Orford, and we very often pick people up at the one end of Port Orford and drop them off at the other on that Coastal Express. And that is always available to them 3 times a week.
I think a lot of this could be just information, getting information out to the folks in Port Orford. But I think some people have limited resources and they have limited time.
Absolutely.
Especially the extreme seniors. So anything you can do to help assist with that would be greatly appreciated by this commission.
It is absolutely on my radar.
Thank you so much.
One more. How long have you been head of Curry Public Transit?
This is my 3rd year as manager, but my 13th year is in Curry Public Transit.
Thank you,
Thanks
Mr.
for your
Chair.
service.
Thank you very
Mr.
much.
Gold?
I'd just like to add one more thing. Kathy is an extremely hard worker. I've been working on that board for several months now, and I'm impressed with what's going on. So thanks for your work.
Thanks so much.
We enjoy it, and we enjoy being a service to the community. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good trip.
I only have one actual public comment on here. David Barnes. You're going to pass for now? Okay. Then we're going to move on to the public comments for 2A. Oh, do we want to do the presentations first?
Yeah.
Because these public comments are going to take quite a while.
I would do a public comment.
I would, yes.
Yeah.
I think so.
All right, why don't we go ahead and do the public comments then? All right, so let's start with Tama Kurgan. Rob Taylor.
That's fine.
Expecting to be on the agenda, and we have a routine that we've been doing for a while. I want to give you this before we start.
Yeah, you have to.
And I'll repeat that when I get up to the mic.
Thank you.
Hi, Sue. How you doing?
Pretty good.
I don't know you, Mr. Posh, but it's good to meet you.
You as well.
Court.
Good to see you.
This is very important. It'll come up at some point in the conversation. Hello, Commissioners. My name is Rob Taylor, and I've traveled here from Bend in Oregon, where I'm part of the Committee to Preserve the Second Amendment. I was asked to come down here by a woman named Lynn Boniface, and she's in the audience with us today. But the reason I'm here is that I was originally came to this county about 3 years ago when there was another commission. It was Huxley, it was Brown, and it was David Brock Smith. And we had long discussions on the Second Amendment preservation ordinance. That ordinance, we had a little bit different ordinance that we had in Coos County. It was the same one in Coos County was the one that was originally drafted in Wallowa County and was the first one that was put into effect in the state of Oregon. Even though Jackson County also has a form of the Second Amendment preservation ordinance in their county charter called the right to bear arms. So all of those were something that we were interested in having passed here in Curry County. So we worked with the commissioners, and you guys have an original Second Amendment preservation ordinance because we veered off from what the others did. And the other Second Amendment preservation ordinance, it had a position that the sheriff will determine whether something was a violation of your Second Amendment rights, whether it be a state law or a federal law, and that determination was based on the sheriff. For your county, it's based on the Board of Commissioners. For the Josephine County right to bear arms charter amendment, it's the district attorney who makes that determination. Now, we thought it was good law, and we still think it's good law, but the thing is that it's going to eventually be challenged. You know, the litigation for this issue is going to eventually come down the line, and we believe that because we've conflated the two branches of government, because the DA, the sheriff, and the Board of Commissioners are in the executive branch of the government, whereas the judges who would be determining the actual constitutionality of laws that is part of the judicial branch. And so you have the people in the executive branch making those determinations, which should be left up to the judicial branch. And we think that that's a weakness in the Second Amendment preservation ordinance. Knowing this and knowing that they were going to legally challenge it, we went to the 10th Amendment Center because they have already dealt with this type of law that they have for their state 10th Amendment law, which allows the states to choose whether they would uphold federal gun laws or not. There are some states, there is already one state who has passed that law, but we wanted to do that on a county level because it's not the federal laws that we have problem with, it's the state laws that we're having problems with. And so we knew that the SAPA was going to be challenged, so we had the 10th Amendment Center, and I worked with their attorneys, and we came up with the Second Amendment Sanctuary Ordinance, which is the new ordinance that we're presenting to you. That ordinance eliminates the sheriff's position or the district attorney's position or your position as someone who makes the determination whether a law that is a state law or federal law violates your Second Amendment rights. And what we did is we give you a directive to the county that says you will not cooperate. May I continue?
Another minute or two, yeah.
Okay, it says that you may not cooperate with any state or federal laws that concern firearms or firearms accessories. And that's just a directive that's in there for the county, which means the sheriff or no one from the county will be able to cooperate, or you will not be able to provide resources to uphold any state or federal gun laws. And what it does is it goes after the laws that are directed towards the firearms and not towards actions. You'll still be able to keep felons from being able to be in the possession of a firearm. You'll still be able to stop people who use firearms illegally, but you're going after the action. You're not going after the actual inanimate object, which is the firearm itself. And that's what we believe is infringing on our rights, and we believe that's going to happen worse in this state because of SB 501 that's coming down out of the legislature. I've been traveling all over Washington state because they too are having this problem, and I could sit here for an hour to tell you all the aspects that this covers. But the thing is that they're attacking our Second Amendment rights, and they're using many different ways to go after those rights. They're going to force us to get permits. They're going to force us to get psychological evaluations. They're going to force us to not be able to buy weapons. So eventually, we're going to have to enforce the Second Amendment, which shall not be infringed, our right to bear arms. And what this ordinance does, it does just that for the county, but only the county. The state and the feds will be able to enforce their laws if they want to. I gave you this sheet of paper. This right here is the statement from the Coos County District Attorney, which is the ballot title. At some point in time, if you read this ballot title, I know you're going to have some concerns with this law, and I would wish we had time to do that, and I'd like to do that in a work session at some point in time.
Well, and that's what I'm going to suggest to everyone that is here on this topic. If we're going to have, basically people coming up and speaking about the same issues. I've spoken with several people about this. Our sheriff's department is here, and they want to get involved in this as well. What we would like to suggest is that we have a workshop on this issue itself, and everyone come together, the sheriff's department come together, your group comes together, even maybe the judicial branch of the county comes together with commissioners, and we sit and talk about this. I would say that this is something that we need to talk about. I'm a huge supporter of the Second Amendment personally, so that's where I'd like to see this go.
Okay. And then that's what I would recommend myself, by the way. That's what we were asking.
Yeah. Any other comments from the commission?
We have other...
I understand we have more.
I'm sorry.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, gentlemen. And Sue, sorry.
Tama Kurgan.
Good morning, Commissioners. Tama Kurgan out of
Morning,
Camas
sir.
Valley. Thank you for allowing us to come and speak to you today. Again, we were planning to be here on the agenda. I had to change a doctor's appointment for that. However, we're here now, and we'll go ahead and take care of this. My colleague and I, Rob Taylor, have been working on these things for the past few years, and we've been successful in 12 counties in the state and one city at Myrtle Point that also passed their own SAPO. So in streamlining the SASO, we find it's much more feasible, more adequate, straight line, takes the sheriff his options out of there, his ability to decide the constitutionality, which he has every ability to. They're not granted anything, but however, moot point. My rights as an American citizen are non-negotiable. If anybody wants to turn in their firearms or weapons or give up their Second Amendment right, then that's their right to do it, but they have no ability and no right to determine if I am to have my rights taken from me or not. I've never been charged or arrested for anything. I had my first speeding ticket last year, 2 years ago. And so these laws that Salem is coming out with are wholly irresponsible, unacceptable, and unnecessary. The 501 was written by a bunch of high school kids. And Senator Wagner said, hey, tell us what you want, and we'll advocate for you. Well, I'm an adult. These kids can't even own a firearm. Okay, so they have no business doing that, in my opinion. I just want to read something here real quick, a comment by Daniel Webster. It says, it is hardly too strong to say that the Constitution was made to guard the people against the dangers of good intentions. There are men in all ages who mean to govern well, but they mean to govern. They promise to be good masters, but they mean to be masters. And I'm not talking about present company. What we're finding out is the assaults are coming down from Salem. We don't have enough representation in the House and Senate to speak for us. And this is why we're using our First Amendment to redress our grievances so we can do this too. We're not attorneys. We're limited on our budgets, but we do the best we can on it. And it is our right as citizens to redress our grievances, and as your representatives to do that for us and take it up the ladder. So what we're finding is those folks up north are telling us what to do down here, but they're not here. Now, law enforcement is a great tool, but law enforcement only comes out and draws a chalk line. That's what happens. So we need to protect our rights, our individual rights to keep and bear arms, and to protect our families. Now, these laws that they're coming up with do not apply to law-abiding citizens, period. And I think any law enforcement officer can concur with me on that point. Lastly, it says from Thomas Jefferson, in the questions of power, then let no more be heard of confidence in man, but bind him down from mischief by the chains of the Constitution. And that's what we're asking you to do. We find that one of the main reasons that these people are violating their oath of office, which by fact is a Class C felony under Title 18 U.S.C. 1621 through 1623, and you can find that on there. It's a $5,000 fine and 10 years, or $10,000 fine and 5 years in jail. So, again, we need the representation from you folks to pass it on up. May I continue? Okay. Thank you very much. And I understand there's a lot of concern about this gun issue, but they're blowing it totally out of proportion. Now, I've never shot anybody. I've never been shot at. Had bullets coming over my head. But the thing here is that you have the right to keep and bear arms. We don't need someone telling us we can only have 20 rounds per month or a 5-round magazine. Not going to happen. And what they're asking for is revolution. And we are trying to, with these SAPOs, we are trying to prevent bloodshed, where we see that in our communities that our people, the patriots, a lot of them are uprising because they're wanting to go to war. They don't know how to have an outlet. And so this helps drive them in the direction to use our ballot box rather than the cartridge box. And so that's what I'm saying here. Please represent the people of this county. I have family here, lots of friends, former co-workers. I love this county. And I intend to be coming through here. See, it doesn't just protect the citizens that live here, it's those going through, transient as well. So we have a lot of constitutional sheriffs here in this county, in our state, that are behind this. There's no repercussions for it. We haven't been challenged in the courts, and we've had it for, what, 4 years, Rob? 5 years? Okay. So, again, we appreciate you putting this on the agenda or on a work session. We'll be happy to come back down and answer your questions. You have our emails if you want to contact us. And is there any question you have of me?
Well, I won't pretend to speak for the sheriff, but I have had several conversations with him about this.
Right.
There are some concerns with some of the language in this, only because from his standpoint, we can lose federal and state funding from this.
Okay.
On some of the language that's in this, as well as his being able to protect, in my opinion, protect the citizens of the county.
Oh, I
That's
understand.
why I feel, as does he in his conversations with me, that it would be very good to schedule this for a workshop and begin to work this through, because I think there is going to be a common ground here.
Right.
I know John on a personal level as
Oh,
well.
yes.
And I don't think John wants anyone coming down here taking our guns either.
No, but also I would submit that we don't trade rights for financial, regardless of what it is, a grant or otherwise. And Sheriff Ward is a very honorable, very good person. I worked with him personally for over 8 years. And Craig Zanni over in Coos County, the sheriff there, he's always getting grants through DHS, the feds, and state. We passed it 4 years ago there, and there's no problem with it. So,
well, I'm not saying there's going to be a problem here.
Right.
I'm just saying I think it deserves to go to a workshop and have a formal
Absolutely.
workshop on this, that everyone can get to the table and get things worked out.
absolutely.
All right,
And,
thank you,
and
sir.
again, the feds cannot hold back on that, so they can't use that as discriminatory for financial aid. So thank you
you.
very much, folks. Appreciate it.
Lynn Boniface? You here?
Good morning, Commissioners. I'm Lynn Boniface. I live in Pistol River. And the only thing I think Tom and Rob have covered it pretty well. The only thing I want to say this morning is that a lot of people are asking, well, why? We already have one. Well, the reason why is because we don't know who our commissioners are going to be 2 years from now or 4 years from now. And Sheriff Ward is a Second Amendment sheriff. He will protect our rights, but Sheriff Ward isn't going to be the sheriff forever either. He might retire next time. He might decide not to run. I don't know. So it's the unknown that we're talking about. You know, it's not knowing if our next government, if you will, is going to be Second Amendment government. So that's the reason why, is we just don't want to take any chances. Thank you.
Commissioner Gold?
I just want to make one comment. If we were to do an ordinance, that could be rescinded by the next commission.
If you were to do an ordinance, yes.
Yes, I just want you to know
No,
that.
and that's true of the one currently in place as well.
Right,
So that's
exactly.
why I say we don't know who the next commissioners are going to be. So
if we were to put your ordinance instigate it, or
well, that's why we want to go.
it could be changed.
That's why we want to go for a ballot. We want to go for the people to vote on this.
Okay, if that's the case, I'm all for that.
Yeah,
I think
that's
the people
that's
should
our
definitely
whole
have a say.
intent. That's our whole intent, is to get this on the ballot and get the people to vote for it. So thank you.
I think as far as the ballot measure goes, I mean, I think that is the fair way to look at this. I'm just saying, if you want something to pass like you and I spoke about the other day,
Yeah.
you know, it's best for everyone concerned on that ballot issue to get together and talk
Absolutely.
about it, so that the language is clear.
Yep.
The citizens of this county understand what they're being asked to vote on, and that whether it has the best chance to pass or fail.
Absolutely, 100% agree. I would love to sit at a table with everybody and discuss it.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you.
Is he on the list?
Yeah, I understood that this item was stricken from the agenda. I'm surprised it's come up, but that's why I didn't sign up to speak.
If I
on
may,
this.
Mr. Palmer, it's just,
Tim Palmer of
I want to
Port Orford.
clarify something here. We pulled it from the agenda to have it go to the citizens for, as a ballot measure, but we didn't eliminate the discussion or the public comment.
Okay.
Thank you. Did you fill out a slip on this issue?
I didn't know.
Okay, well, there's people ahead of you that did.
I thought it was not coming up.
No offense taken,
Yeah,
but I'm
sure.
very anxious to hear what you have to say.
So it's simply that I read through the material in the packet, and my understanding of that is that is a recommendation that the commissioners pass an ordinance that would bind them and county officials from obeying state law and the laws of the United States of America. And that would be illegal. And it would also be against the oath of office that you all took in taking the position that you did. And so I'm wondering why you're spending time considering an ordinance that would bind you to disobeying the laws of the state and the nation.
Well, Mr. Palmer, I think everyone in this county should have an equal voice to speak. You're down here to speak on some other issues today, and if I don't agree with those issues, should I ask you to leave or not speak? I think everyone's voice in this county should be equal. And that's why we've spoken already to the Sheriff's Department about this. I've spoken to some state officials about this, some senators, and they recommend that it go in front of a workshop and let everyone get their feelings out. I think that's the fair way to do it, and I hope that the next 4 years that I'm in office, I will treat everyone with equal respect in this county, and if they want to come to this board and voice their opinions, I'm willing to hear them.
I'm not objecting to that at all. What I'm objecting to is the commissioners spending their time actually considering an ordinance that would be against the law.
Well, and that's what we have lawyers and our legal service and our sheriff's department and judges to tell us, you know what, guys, what you're looking at here, and if it's written in the language that it is, it's illegal. But if we have a workshop and we change this wording and make it this way, then it becomes legal, and then it becomes a palatable item.
Has your counsel given you an opinion on the
Not yet.
material that's been
Not
given
yet.
to you?
This will turn into a debate.
Thank you, sir. Connie Hunter.
I'm Connie Hunter, a proud citizen of South Curry County, and I'm really excited to be here today to see this new board, to see this rehire of Julie Schmelzer, but most of all to speak on behalf of veterans with regards to this special attempt to change and create a better ordinance locally for the Second Amendment ordinance. You know, some of the most important things that are jumping out at me right now were comments that were made in the newspaper today with Commissioner Boyce championing more background checks. And the idea of having multiple stakeholders in an upcoming workshop is essential, and including Curry Community Health and the VA in those conversations, I think, is really essential. The damning statistics of veteran suicide in the U.S. is basically part of the problem has been wait times, that the VA wasn't getting their job done, and we're getting better at that locally, and have in fact added a suicide prevention staffer to serve over Coos and Curry County, and he's a social worker, so he's going to be an added piece of the puzzle in trying to address veteran suicide. The sad truth is that veterans and active duty service members are at a far higher risk in terms of suicide rate per 100,000 than any other group, and all are above the national average. Beyond that, among other groups at risk are rural populations in general, Native populations, youth between 15 and 24 years old. And we have to add in a couple of other things, because as we weigh out how we can handle the freedom and the responsibility, and we're talking about the responsibility side of things here, 52% of all suicides have been committed by firearms. And those are statistics. So of the 436,110 suicides nationally, 228,172 were suicides committed by firearms. I would like to share some information. It's actually a VA press release. It's talking about effective last November, the National Shooting Sports Foundation began working with the VA to develop a program that will empower communities to engage in safe firearms storage practices. The program will include information to help communities create coalitions around promoting and sustaining firearm safety, with an emphasis on service members, veterans, and families. I'd like to share this with everybody in the room, and let's balance that freedom with responsibility. And you know I'm all about freedom, but I'm also on the other side of that coin, advocating for responsibility in our choices to include the VA and Curry Community Health in that stakeholders workshop meeting with regards to this amendment.
I'm sure Ms. Smelzer is taking a list of everyone that's going to want to be in this. So, thank you, Ms. Hunter. Heidi Taylor. Hey, thanks. Thanks, Ms. Hunter.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Heidi Taylor, and I represent the League of Women Voters. I live in Gold Beach, and I was going to read a whole big thing that Lucy had given me, but I'm shortening it up just to make a very quick statement. The League of Women Voters of the United States has adopted the following position: to protect the health and safety of citizens through limiting the accessibility and regulating the ownership of handguns and semi-automatic weapons. They support regulation of firearms for consumer safety. And that's all I'm going to read right now, and I know that we're having a board meeting this next week, and I'm looking forward to attending the workshop and getting a little bit more knowledge about where we're headed in this. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll just have a brief comment when the public comments are through on this issue, this matter.
Okay. Mr. Hodges just turned in a slip here, and there's no agenda topic. And I understand that this is our first week of being at 9 o'clock meetings and not 10. So we'll forgive the late entry of this, but if you would, I need a topic for this.
Food and fire. I was here for public comment.
Oh, okay. All right. Paul Goodell.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Paul Goodell. I live down in Brookings. I don't have anything written down, so I'm kind of just doing this by the seat of my pants. Being a former resident of California, I've seen what happens when rural counties basically rolled over because of funding. I support the Second Amendment in a fair weather fashion. I'm not going to risk my funding. I'm not going to risk my job. I'm not going to risk my pension to protect your rights. And I've seen that happen all over California. California, sorry, is a tyrannical state. I'm cool with balancing rights with responsibility. Okay, but there's nothing responsible about forfeiting your constitutional rights. If Donald Trump decided to expand the Patriot Act and really dig into your Fourth Amendment rights, and you had a sheriff standing up for you, saying, no, you're not going to be violating my citizens' Fourth Amendment rights, you're not going to be doing searches without a warrant, and all that kind of stuff, I doubt you people would really be having a hard time with that. But, you know, the Second Amendment is kind of like the redheaded stepchild of the Bill of Rights, it seems, when it comes to legislation. You know? So I'm really hoping I'm down for this workshop thing. I support that. I will attend. And, you know, I hope we do it with a cool head. But I'm telling you, across the West Coast right now, Washington and Oregon are trying to catch up to California. And I'm not going to have it, you know. And to keep things civil, I really think the county government should get behind the people here. And let's do this so we can actually keep this in a civil fashion, because I think, honestly, they're being really irresponsible in Portland. And they're trying to pretty much step on the rest of the state's neck. You know what I mean? My rights are not up to the popular vote. Your rights aren't up to the popular vote. Okay? 2 wolves and a lamb voting on what to have to lunch. That's not what this country's bounded on, okay? So let's get this workshop going. I'm saying this, I think Rob and Tom for coming down here and backing this thing up for us. But let's get this workshop going. I plan on working on that with you guys, but please, I'm not a little militia member. I'm not part of some fringe group. There's a lot of guys that agree with me on this. The problem is right now, they're at work paying their taxes to support all this right now. You know what I mean? And one thing we do have in Curry County is we got a lot of active California transplants that retired to get politically active, acting like the majority around here, and that's really not the case. So, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you. I will say one of the reasons I'm sitting in this chair, sir, is because I've sat and watched how rural Oregon has been treated by the big cities in this state over the years. And I think rural Oregon needs to have a louder voice. And that's why I agree we need to have a workshop on this.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. Commissioner Boyce, you wanted some comments, because I believe that's the last public comment on this topic.
We double-check that. If there's anybody else that would like to speak on this issue,
We're done.
we'll see you at the workshop. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
By the way, we're going to need a large room for that.
I hope so. Just a reminder, no, there are no cases, in my strong personal opinion, where state law or federal law trumps the Constitution. I think equally important, perhaps even more important, is no state law or federal law that trumps the Bill of Rights. You know, I've tried to get a tradition, and you encouraged me as well, to have a little report every commissioners meeting of losses to our law enforcement community throughout the United States. Right now the number's up to 14. If you haven't heard this news piece, last week in Houston, 5 officers were basically ambushed, shot in the neck. 2 or 3 of them, I think. 4 of them have survived. 2 of them are going to be, at least one for sure is going to be a quadriplegic. The reason they shoot them in the neck is because they might live then and end up that way. And the reason this is sensitive to me is because there's a war on our police. And our sheriff, captain, that team is still only been able to fill 2 spots of 4 that are open, looking for officers. There is a nationwide shortage. Young people are not going into law enforcement. And so here we sit. I feel most comfortable and safest when I'm around law officers. Excuse me. Again, I have a middle son who's been with OSP, Oregon State Police, for 16, 17 years. I feel safest when I'm around him and police officers with the training they've got. I feel second most safest when I'm around legal, responsible gun owners. And they are out there, and their job, my job, our job is to protect the peace, protect our neighbors, protect our families. And the way I was raised, you protect the police officers. Whatever it takes, you protect them. And when you see what's going on in our country, I'm going to conclude with this. Thank you, Mr. Chair. When you see what's going on in our country right now with the division we have, when people actually, we would not be having this conversation 5 years ago when people go, is there going to be a revolution? Is there going to be, you know, I have to maintain and fight for my right to protect myself. And I'm sorry it's come to that. And I hope that cooler heads over time can and will prevail, And I also appreciate very much your comments, and I think you're leading us in the right direction. Thank you again, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so I'd like a recommendation here. Should we hear the rest of the public comments on other items, or should we hold them until those items are up?
I'd say go.
I kind of think we ought to wait until the items come up so we can hear the opinions before we vote on various items.
Okay. All right, I agree with that. Let's do that. So let's go ahead and go to presentations. Cena Crook, Service Award presentation. Come on in, Cena.
Hello. Hello. Louise Kallstrom, County Accountant. I have a cold, so this is going to be a team effort to, for the Finance Office to present 10-year Service Award and 10-year pin to our good friend Cena Crook, who is a fabulous assistant. She does a great job, and she is also has one of the best senses of humor that I have ever had in an assistant. So I'm really grateful to her, and I'm going to ask Julie to help me. So, because I'm not supposed to be breathing in their direction right now. So
we appreciate that.
So Julie Swift, Payroll and HR. I just want to say that we are truly a team in the Finance Office, and we couldn't work without each other, and Cena is a huge part of that three-legged stool, so thank you very much.
I'll just say it's been a pleasure and an honor to work in the Happy Hall.
Commissioner Boyce.
Forgive me, but I got to introduce that guy standing behind you on the left. Vietnam veteran Ron Crook. I'm sorry that it's been awful for you and I to share the same birthday, but when I was young, my dad asked me to send him postcards showing appreciation while he was in Vietnam. And thank you for the great citizen you've been in this community, Ron. He used to ride in a race boat with my son going well over 100 miles an hour, and he lived to tell about it. Thank you, Ron and Cena, for your friendship.
Thank you.
Can I sign that too?
All right, we're going to move on to, thanks again, Cena.
Thank you.
We're going to move on to the consent agenda.
So, Chair, I do have some changes to the consent agenda.
Okay. Julie Schmelzer.
Right, Julie Schmelzer for the record, and it is regarding G, which is the job description in higher order for economic development. So HR did send the job description to LGPI, and we did have a minor recommendation or some changes on the job description itself. One is changing the supervisory responsibility, so it's lessened, and then also the requirement for years of experience has decreased. It is still at an N11 as you had in your packet. And then the other change was, real quickly, the order you had the salary wrong, was using an older salary chart, so this is the current salary chart on that, so I'll just do that as well. Other than that, there are no other changes.
Okay. All right, so we're going on to,
do we need
You need a motion.
yes,
do we need to approve the consent calendar then?
undo?
Oh, I just said move on. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
I did. So you get a motion to approve the consent agenda calendar.
So moved, Mr. Chair.
I'll
Second,
second it. Oh, well, that's okay.
roll call?
Ash,
Aye?
Vice Chair Boyce,
Aye.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, number A is higher order for Kaylee Strain.
That was all just approved.
Everything's all approved then, right? Okay.
There were no
Everything's
other comments.
Okay. Going to move on to our action items. And we have a public comment on action item B, Steve Mauser. Mazur, sorry.
Chair Posh, Commissioner Sue Gold, and Vice Chair Boyce. I'm Stephen Major. I'm the District Fisheries Biologist for Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife in Gold Beach. I'm here to talk about your request by Mr. Byerland to submit a letter of no confidence to the Corps of Engineers and ODFW as far as mitigation requirements for Coal River's hatchery. We did want to say that we do have, I did get a chance to watch Mr. Byerland's presentation from the last meeting. I thought when I watched that presentation that there were some issues with misunderstandings as far as the population of spring chinook in the Rogue River, and how there's some confusion between the wild run and the hatchery return of spring chinook to the Rogue River. Back in 2007, we developed a spring chinook conservation plan that addressed the wild spring chinook in the Rogue River, and the wild run of spring chinook in the Rogue River begins in March and will run through June and into early July. The hatchery component of spring chinook returns at the same time, starting in March, and returns back to Coal River's hatchery October. By the end of October, we have most of the fish back to Coal River's hatchery. In that presentation that Mr. Byerland had on there, that he did say that the hatchery returns were definitely down compared to what mitigation requirements are. And ODFW has tried to address those issues, and through the conservation plan and the assessment and update that we just completed, we had a public meeting here in Gold Beach and a public meeting in Central Point. And of those two meetings, we spelled out how actions that we've taken in the last 5 years to address returns of hatchery fish back to Coal Rivers, and our actions that we will take to address those issues. The wild spring chinook, the other component of the run, is actually have been increasing since the adoption of the spring chinook plan, conservation plan. The numbers have actually increased to the point to where anglers can maybe expect some increased harvest opportunities for wild spring chinook, and that was too addressed in that conservation plan update and review. So like I say, those two, that process has just got completed, and I believe, Mr. Commissioner Posh was that meeting prior to his being on the board, and Mr. Byerland was at that meeting in November. So that information is out there. I don't think it's hidden by any means. If anglers or commissioners would be interested in looking at that information, it is on our website. All that information about conservation plans, the updates, annual reports, and it does address some of the hatchery concerns that Mr. Byerland has. I would suggest that after looking at that presentation and talking to local anglers and public, that maybe it would be good to have what Mr. Byerland had recommended about putting together a work group. Would be good to see, so we could actually have that information out there and get regular updates on what has been done as far as spring chinook on the Rogue River.
Well, thank you for that. I have a couple of comments. Yes, I was at that meeting in November, and I had some concerns then. I think a lot of this could be dealt with. I think Mr. Byerland's identified, and I don't mean to speak for him, but he's identified some areas and some timelines on different release dates that might do better for the smolt that are released into the rivers and the times that they're released, which would improve the returns. Our biggest question is that of the failures of the Corps of Engineers and the contracts that they signed when they agreed to build a dam. I noticed this morning that there is an article that was released, I believe it was yesterday or today, that the Corps of Engineers has now all of a sudden noticed that there are issues with the fish hatchery, and they are sending a team there this week to look into it. The problem for Curry County is, and Josephine County and Jackson County is, businesses in this county, our fish, our river, have taken a big hit. We've lost millions and millions of dollars of revenue because of the mitigation losses through the failures of return of the fish in the county and on the Rogue River Basin itself. That's why we thought of the action item for the letter of no confidence, which I think will get everyone to the table and we can start to talk about this. But there's got to be some responsibility taken by some different groups to address this and explain to the people of Curry County, Jackson and Josephine County, and everyone in the Rogue Basin why they didn't adhere to the contracts that they signed and the losses that we've taken because of those failures. Commissioner Gold.
I spoke with Dan Van Dijk, who works with Mr. Major, and it was interesting to talk to him. I knew nothing about this until Mr. Byerland came forth, and so I wanted to know more. I wanted to find out some more information, and there was one thing that was omitted from Mr. Byerland's report. The mitigation agreement was set up for 3 dams originally, but only 2 of those dams were built. And so the numbers that were presented, I would think, would be skewed. And I asked him, would it be 2/3 of the numbers? And he said, no, probably not, but definitely the numbers were skewed a bit. And also, since all of this has come out, he told me that there's funding for a renovation of the hatch house. Apparently that kind of went under a bit. They've been trucking hatchlings to Gold Beach.
Yeah, we
just
started that 2 years ago.
Just to see how that would work. They've been trucking.
We do a March release now in the Upper River that's trucked down to Gold Hill.
Right.
So there's a lot of actions that have actually taken place, and I think that they were left out in that presentation. And I think that it would be good to have a better understanding of for folks that haven't paid attention or where they can go look to find out this information, because it is out there. And I think as being fishery managers, ODFW being fishery managers of the Rogue River, which we consider very important fisheries, not just spring Chinook, but fall Chinook, coho, steelhead, half pounders, life history. So there's a lot of great fisheries on the Rogue River, and I think that information's out there, and anglers need to be able to find it and know what's going on.
So I guess my point is that they have been doing some things to mitigate these issues. In the presentation that Mr. Byerland made, I didn't get the feeling that any of that was being done. So I just wanted to check with another source. So I hesitate to vote for this simply because we need to work with the governmental agencies that we're dealing with.
My biggest issue, though, is that, again, this has gone on year after year after year without being addressed. The numbers have been brought before the different agencies over the years, and I don't want to say been swept under the rug, because I think that would be inappropriate. What I will say is that I think they know that they haven't been producing the numbers back to the hatchery that they were supposed to, and rather than deal with that, they've just continued on status quo. Now that we've raised some attention to this, in the last year or two, a lot of documentation has started to come out about this. Mr. Byerland has worked, who I noticed just walked into the room, has worked tirelessly on this issue for about 3 years. His information, as far as I see, is pretty solid. And again, I've spoken with you, I've been at that meeting, and I've spoken with some other people. I'm not saying that we put on our gloves and get in a fist fight. What I'm saying is this needs to be addressed, and I agree with Mr. Byerland on this at this point. The letter of no confidence is just the history of what's already happened here since the dam has been built. The contract was not fulfilled. I don't believe on more than 75% of the years that it was supposed to have been fulfilled. So a letter of no confidence on this will start an action item on this and get it to the forefront of everyone. Everyone will learn the information about it, and then we can deal with it head on. Anyone else? Mr. Boyce, Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. My link didn't come up very well, or didn't come up at all, but this article just came out yesterday. Mark Freeman, very well-respected editor, writer for the... That's a... Huh? Seriously? Huh?
Sorry.
Yeah, it's the most sensitive mouse. We're going to replace that when we can afford it. Well, while we're looking...
Ah.
Just hit the other side, the other button.
Yeah.
The right button.
I'm just trying to keep it on.
It's okay. I just want to read one paragraph.
Go ahead.
But, you know, obviously the title is Core to Assess Ailing Rogue River Hatchery. One steelhead collection didn't quite go as planned Tuesday morning, etc. Next paragraph. First, the third paragraph, I'm sorry. The aches and pains at this 46-year-old facility are adding up. And this week it gets a full physical to see what works and what doesn't at a hatchery responsible for most of the salmon and steelhead that rogue anglers keep annually. Last sentence, again, most of the salmon and steelhead the rogue anglers keep annually. I think our concern isn't so much with the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. I think it's more with the relationship you have with the Corps of Engineers and thank you very much. Now we got to roll down, huh? Yeah. Real quick, Mr. Chair. But after 14 years, the coincidence of this happening just 2 weeks after Mr. Byerland made his presentation, and thank goodness for Citizen Byerland for this work. I think it's very responsible. I think it's very respectful. But to think or to not highlight the impact, as you just stated, Mr. Chair, that this has had on our area. Mr. Missouri, I know that you've worked hard, and boy, you have our support and the people you work with. You mentioned a workshop. When all else fails, go to the workshop. I think, though, that is really in line with what we're dealing with here. Better plan on going to Grants Pass because they are coming on board to help us, we, them, and so that'll be centrally located between Curry and Jackson County. And, you know, there's sometimes this notion that as elected public officials in counties, be it rural or urban, that the federal managing agencies always have the last word. So after all these years, to have a citizen step up to the plate, with some help from other citizens, by the way, and collect this information and do the very best diligent research and work to get, you know, very qualified information. Let's prove him wrong, or let's prove him right and see how we can overcome this and get the counties together and the managing agencies. It is not too late to reverse this trend, and we can all agree that it is a negative trend. So thank you for being here today.
And I'd like to say also, I appreciate the work you're doing. I really do, and I'm not wanting to be the negative voice here. I know you guys work very hard to sustain the Rogue River. My biggest point is that there's been a lot of damage done, and there should be some sort of compensatory damages, whatever the words are, to the people that have given their lives to this industry. You know, some of the businesses here on the Rogue River Basin, the guides, all the people that have spent thousands of dollars to come here annually. I heard a rumor last week that no one's booking steelhead trips right now because they don't want to lose their customers because they're probably not going to catch any fish. That's pretty sad in the county, and I'm just saying that was a rumor I heard. I'm not saying there's truth to it. I'm just saying that was a rumor I heard, that the guys didn't want to risk losing
on the road right now,
because they were afraid if they came here and didn't catch any fish, their customers wouldn't return. And I think you would agree that the amount of anglers that come to the Rogue Basin in the last 20 years has greatly declined. And I want to say that I don't feel it's probably not because people don't like the beauty of the area. They want to catch fish when they come here.
Chair Posh, like I said, I don't think you want to say the Rogue Basin in general, because our fall Chinook run is huge. It's really big. We got a lot of anglers here that come for fishing the fall Chinook, and actually they come for that later portion of the spring Chinook run that starts in June, in June for when anglers can keep wild spring Chinook. So, and then our summer steelhead run has been fabulous the last few years. So I don't think you want to say that the Rogue Basin is having a bad run. And I don't think the spring Chinook run is, like I say, the wild spring Chinook run in general has been an uptick since the conservation plan. So I don't think you want to, cover the whole Rogue watershed when you say that. I think you want to address a particular fish or a particular time of the year. So,
Commissioner Boyce.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. We've had a couple pretty good steelhead seasons in the fall, but it's pretty much limited to that. It hasn't been a consistent 5 or 10 year good steelhead run. When you look at the fishing guides, the 4-day, 3-night steelhead fishing trips that come down from Grants Pass through the canyon to Agnes, basically in there. I mean, that's the Zane Gray program that started back in the 20s, and we all know that history. And we need to be reminded, and I'm a little bit more sensitive towards steelhead than even the salmon for a couple different reasons, but not just the economy, but the Rogue is famous, as you also know, for many things. It's not most famous for salmon fishing or jet boats or even whitewater rafting. It is #1 around the world, most famous for steelhead fishing. So I'm thankful that we've had a couple pretty good years, and I keep in very close touch with the Grants Pass and the Downriver Canyon guides, but it's been the exception to the rule, and so I have to be involved in that, as I promised them a long time ago.
Yeah.
So thank you again.
No, it's like I say, the Rogue is doing really well. I don't think you want to knock the Rogue. And we're just seeing, the fisheries respond to removal of Savage Rapids, Gold Hill, Gold Ray dams, and we're just coming, and they're hopefully coming out of some really poor ocean conditions. So I don't think you want to, the sky is falling on our Rogue fisheries. So
thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
C, order referring ordinance number 1901, the TLT.
Chair, so what action, if any, do we want to take on 6B?
Well, I'd like to make a motion that we sign the letter of no confidence and send Mr. Byland to Josephine County tomorrow afternoon with a signed order.
Mr. Byland, you still want me to go with you? Okay.
Do I have a second?
Second here, Mr. Chair.
Any further comments or questions? Roll.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
No.
Motion.
All right. C, referring order, interim counsel.
So this is before you, I believe.
Do you have a microphone on? There should be a microphone.
Speak super loudly. This is before you, as you know, send the order to the voters. I think it was originally per the agenda item to be included in your consent agenda, but it is not. So it is here for your action.
Do I have a motion?
I'll move, Mr. Chair.
A second?
I'll second.
Any further comments? Roll.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Carried.
Move to D, security cameras for the annex. Commissioner Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You've heard in previous comments and testimony that I've offered. A year ago, April, I asked for an executive session to go into try and determine why the cameras were mysteriously on these 2 levels of the annex disappeared. I had a general bid from facilities maintenance director Hanson that it would take about $1,000. That he had the camera parts, but he needed a little bit extra. And anyway, for some unbelievable reason, I was turned down in that executive session. We didn't need cameras. And so since then, we've had 3 break-ins or partial break-ins, and it's well documented. So my hunch was certainly valid. And I think now it's even cheaper. And I think you have some background in security cameras, and we're looking at 600, 800, if I recall, you even volunteered to put them up yourself, and I will give a Saturday to help you because I'm a real tech guy. No, kidding. So that's my presentation. It is time to get this done. We are exposed unnecessarily and unfortunately.
Well, I'd like to say I agree with this. To have someone here on, like I've been here on Saturdays and a Sunday, to have someone downstairs on a Friday alone, because we'd like to possibly reopen the downstairs on Fridays so that our citizens can actually do business on Fridays as well. That's for down the road, but we're looking to do that. I think it's time, though, that we have some sort of security here. If we've got, early morning, one of the secretaries or someone in one of the offices arrives early and they're here by themselves, and possibly somebody does something to one of the doors, they can get in. God forbid something happens, but at least we've got a record of everything that happens here. And for the $600 or $800 that it's going to cost to do that, my experience with cameras is I can get them hung with some help. I can get them hung, and I will volunteer to do that, so we save the labor. But to protect the people of this building, I think for a few $100s, wouldn't it be horrible if something bad happened? We had no record of it. So I would also like to see some security cameras on both floors of the building, and I think we can get it done for about $300 a floor, $350 a floor. Any further comments?
We're going to hold you to that bid.
Do I have a motion?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
I'll second that.
Further comments? Roll.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Move to E, Save Oregon Force Letter, Commissioner Boyce.
Well, it's a long letter, and it has gone out throughout a great portion of the state, and I think it's a good representation of where we are with the with our county, with the 3 major fires. We do have support from the other counties. 3 major fires in less than about 15 months, 2 of them catastrophic fires. Curry County has lost 1 million acres, and we're only 1 million acres in our overall size. We've lost 1 million acres in 32 years. If I may, Mr. Chair, it's the Blossom Fire. It is the certainly the Silver Fire in 1987, the Biscuit Fire in 2002. That was the largest fire in Oregon history, just to remind the people that might be listening. That was 500,000 acres. And of course the Checo Bar Fire and the Klondike Fire. Actually about 1/3 of that was in Curry County. The other 2/3 was in Josephine County, but that's our backyard and their backyard. So it's hard to say precisely what those fires have cost the federal government and the state of Oregon to fight, but it's easily over $350 million. And when we're sitting here trying to figure out how to get another $1 million to keep our services going in this county, it just offers a little bit of a comparison, and I hope what we're up against. We are in the process through these catastrophic fires moving towards a hardwood forest that the evergreens may not be able to come back. So these catastrophic fires burn at 2,000 degrees. They're not normal fires. Some of them are, and some of them are good. That's part of nature. But they're even killing what are normally the fire-resistant old growth as part of nature. The amount of wildlife, the devastation is almost unspeakable. I showed pictures 2 meetings ago that I had of burnt logs on a beach, and those were probably from 4 different fires. So what I'm asking the board to consider the resolution. that has 9 very specific solutions. It also puts the local residents on a greater level of notice and awareness. We need to be reminded what happened to Bandon 2 different times in about a 20-year period. Port Orford burned down twice. Tillamook, Marshfield at Coos Bay burned half of that community. We come so close to losing Agnes last year. It's just even hard to define or describe. Not to mention Brookings. And of course, I always have to bring up the 8 families that still have got no help and lost their homes due to the Checo Bar fire. I had some professional help on this through Curry Wildfire Prevention that you're quite familiar with. 2 are retired foresters. I know this is a divisive issue in our county and in our state, but Oregon's losing the fire war, and I'm not going to stand by and not push back on what this is doing to our community and the best forest on the planet. So I could talk on this for an hour. I think that's enough for now. I would like to have the board's support on this, and it will. I hope I'll be having dinner with Supervisor George on Thursday night, and he gets it, and we'll be able to give you a report at the next meeting. And where his direction is going is and also where we need to encourage the state and the federal managing agencies. If nothing else, can we focus on fire prevention? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, I'll be honest with you, Commissioner Boyce, I haven't read through this letter completely. I would like to take some time to read through this and digest it. If you want to, an affirmative for me that I am in support of a lot of the things that I briefed on here now, of course I am, as you know that.
Okay.
You want to? What do you?
I was just going to maybe go to the solutions here. You may have some more public comments that I would welcome.
I think we have some on the Wildlands Act.
Okay.
For the next. Commissioner Gold.
I just had some concerns with the letter, particularly the last paragraph of the first page. It just seemed like it was the politics of revenge and the vindictiveness and divisiveness going against the environmentalists. We're here to represent all of Curry County, not just a certain faction. Although I will say, when we get into your solutions, I agree with many of them, not all of them, but I don't see a problem with coming up with a resolution, but I am totally against the divisiveness against a certain segment of our county.
If I may, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Boyce.
Thank you, Chair, or excuse me, thank you, Commissioner Gold. These people don't live in Curry County. This is a fringe radical group that has, I was talking to Tim Palmer the other day, and we both work very hard to back up our opinions by science and professionals and records, history, common sense. But this group, I don't think, again, the minority that they are, I don't think that they will come to the table on anything because they're doubling down. That when you burn 300,000 acres in this county in 2 years, that's renewal. When it's a reburn, I mean, it just, the common person that watches this and smells the smoke and visualizes the wildlife being incinerated, I mean, their heads pop back. So we've done it their way for 32 years, and you've seen the results in our community, and I'm giving them the chance. I've said, why are you on I've got in trouble with one person. Why are you against the Forest Service? Well, if you look at the letter here, the reference is, we've got, if I can find it here. It basically says that our U.S. Forest Service is going to again return to grade, bottom paragraph there, great agency status. We must work to reverse the annual witness of turning our beautiful forest assets into the most frightening of liabilities. And then just above that it says we need to give them our support, that we have great leadership, I think, within the Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest now and other national forests. So I don't know why somebody would say that I'm meeting again with the supervisor, and I've spent a lot of time with him. I took him upriver because he'd never been in that section, which is a very important part of his forest, a 5-county portion. So the solutions are there. I'll be glad to sit down and debate, talk with anyone on any one of these 9. And no, I'm not going to back off, I'm sorry, with that very small minority that has got us in this situation, and they have to be stopped, or there will be no force left. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So would you recommend a workshop on this?
No, I would well, you know, we've been through this for 2 years. I've had so much documentation come before this board, and no surprise, I'm getting resistance again. It feels like resistance. Workshop, just maybe that's the only option we got, but I think this document speaks for itself.
Well, as you know, I've been very active in Curry wildfire prevention, and I've been very active in some of the other issues dealing with fire prevention and how to stop them. I've been many meetings with Merv George, and with you as well, and many others from the county. Like I said, I would just like to have, let's put this off for another meeting. I'd like to have time to read this and chew on it, and then make an informed decision. I again ask your forgiveness on this. I haven't actually sat and read this.
I respect that.
Yet. I've just had other things, and I didn't get to this.
I can really appreciate the lack of time in reading. Our weekends get rather bogged down, don't they? Here's what I would offer. We're behind the other 2 counties. We're less than 5 months from the next fire season. We're not getting the rain we need. We're getting a little bit of snow, but is it going to have an impact on the overall watershed? How dry is it going to be 2 months from now, 5 months from now? Are we going to have a 3rd consecutive fire? Are the valley people going to be breathing our smoke while we say we're going to have another workshop? No thanks. I'm going to keep speaking out because the consequences are potentially horrific.
Commissioner Gold?
I am not against having a resolution. What I am against is pointing fingers, that sort of thing. What we need to do is come up with positive solutions. And I think we can do that through a resolution. So I'm not against everything, just to let you know.
All right, so if we wouldn't mind, if it's all right, Commissioner Boyce, I would like to take time and read this and perhaps schedule it again for the next meeting. Is that
okay? Commissioner Gold, did you read the solutions?
Yes, I did.
So do you have problems with any of them? You just said come up with positive solutions.
Like the first one, reduce ground fuels. I think totally agree with that.
Okay, but you just said, why don't we come up with positive solutions? I'm not
that
sure
is
which
a positive solution.
Okay, which one is not positive?
The thing that I disagreed with most was that last paragraph of the first thing where you were...
Not part of the solution. I was told in February of 2017, Mr. Chair, that I shouldn't be allowed to be on the resource committee by one of those people in Brookings, and thank goodness the board overruled that, and so I've been on those committees, and I'm very thankful that I was in that position to do everything I could to protect this county, and I have no other more important responsibility. Sorry.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Commissioner Boyce, would you be okay with me turning this into a resolution format where we're just putting facts in, and it'll probably hold more weight, I think, if it's in a resolution format than a letter format?
Certainly wouldn't be opposed. When you look at the Josephine County and Jackson County efforts, you know, it's sometimes in a formal resolution, sometimes it's in a letter of acceptance and recommendation, and it gets us a voice at the table with the different agencies that are responsible for trying to come up with the funding. And by the way, kudos to the governor. I was nervous that the ODF, the Oregon Department of Forestry, was not going to get adequate funding, and I think that her and her staff, and that's going to pass both the House and the Senate for adequate funding, because we, again, don't know what's coming this summer. But anyway, I'm open to, yes.
Why don't we do that? Why don't we set it in a resolution format, and then we can all brief it again before we...
I would totally agree with that.
As long as this is an accompanying letter, and if there's something specifically that is inappropriate or not factual, tell me what you want to take out, and I will review that.
100%. Thank you. Before we move forward with any further comments, Ms. Rowe, I see you're sitting out there. I just wanted to bring you in really quickly. You may not have known that I guess maybe that our meetings changed to 9 a.m. We did address the call and rideshare program, and they are going to look into that immediately, so you know.
There's more to it than that. Sure. Did you just want a couple of minutes for public comment?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to make my public...
Go ahead, before we get started on the next item. Because I know it was important to you to come in, so we'll let you do that.
But thank you for saying
second,
something
please.
to them.
1 second.
You might also want to let her know that we've heeded her advice on the 30-minute restriction on public comment as well. Remove that from the agenda.
We did remove the 30-minute restriction for public comment.
Oh, thank you.
You know what that
Thank you
means.
so much.
Mary.
We the people appreciate that.
Mary? You know what that means? You understand what we had a total 30 minutes?
Yes, the reason I was told that was because of my last public comment, I asked if that could be removed, the limit, the 30-minute limit.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, I am Mary Rowe. I am here today to speak to you about Curry Public Transit Dollar Ride Service in Port Orford. As I understand it, grant funds should be given to Curry Public Transit in spring in order to provide more service. A Curry Public Transit Advisory Committee has prioritized which services to provide, with a lengthy survey completed by some riders being considered in that prioritization. I have ridden on Curry Public Transit's Transit and Dollar Ride for about 17 years. I have taken Dollar Ride while living in each of the 3 cities. I have a physical disability, and when I lived in Port Orford, I was more disabled and thus could not walk to the store much of the time. So I had to hire care providers at $10 to $15 an hour to shop for me, give them my bank card and my PIN, and entrust them with that as well as cash back from the store. One care provider who was on DHS's approved list kept my bank card, cash, and knew my PIN. In order to pay the care providers, I often could only afford to eat stale, discounted bread, potatoes, margarine, peanut butter, and apples. I was not well enough to go to the food bank. During the tourist season, not enough care providers were available. I had to UPS myself food, and because it was so expensive, I had to go a week, some months without food. Then I learned of Dollar Ride in Port Orford and was able to take it to the grocery store once a week. I could eat and not be a victim of theft. Please encourage Curry Public Transit to give Dollar Ride service in Port Orford a high priority ranking. Port Orford residents didn't have the same opportunities to participate in the survey as South County residents. Gold Beach, which has about 3,000 people, has Dollar Ride 5 hours per day, 4 days a week. Shouldn't Port Orford, with a population of 1,200, have Dollar Ride 1 day a week? There is currently a Curry Public Transit driver living in Port Orford. Apparently, Dollar Ride service in Port Orford wasn't sufficiently utilized at one point. Oh, I closed my thing here. My last thing, I'm sorry. Well, neither was Saturday service in South County, but apparently it will be tried again. And I'm sorry, I have to find my last sentence here. I closed it when I was out there. I'm so sorry.
It's okay.
I knew I should have torn the page out. Ah, here it is. Let's try Dollar Ride in Port Orford again with the focus on getting the word out to those who want and need it. Thank you. The reason I spoke today was because, as I understand it from people who have been on the committee, the Dollar Ride service in Port Orford is ranked low in terms of it being possible. And Commissioner Gold, I know that you're on that committee, so does that jibe with your experience?
I'm all for getting transportation in all areas if possible. Just to let you know.
That's what we discussed this morning, trying to find a little bit more funding for that. She says she does believe that they will be able to find some funding for that. and they are going to look into it.
And I trust that you all got an email from
Brett
Port
Webb.
Orford City
Brett Webb,
Council
yes.
member Brett Webb this morning. He actually sent it last night stating that he very much wants this for his city.
I believe we can get it done.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much. I appreciate it so much.
All right, next we're going to go to the F, which is the wildlands. I know, well, what, if I could for a minute, Mr. Palmer, you have public comment set for 3 items in a row. So what I'd like you to do is if you want to come up and comment on the last one, and then you can lead into this one and make all your public comments, maybe generalized things for the next 3 items that you have public comments listed for.
So regarding I'm Tim Palmer from Port Orford. Regarding the last item, I represent the Kamyapsis Audubon Society here. I'm on the board of directors of that group. We have 350 members in the county. We're concerned about fish and wildlife and birds and promoting good stewardship of all of our natural resources for all of our people, including future generations. We hardly agree with Commissioner Boyce on a number of the things he has said here, particularly the basic goal that we're very concerned about fire and safety. I am for my own life and home, certainly. And we do have some critique of the solutions you've proposed here. And so I'd like to just quickly summarize some of those with some suggestions on what we think is a good way to move forward. Your first solution, Court, is reduce ground fuels. We completely agree with this in cases around our communities and around home sites and around a strategically selected group of roads that can serve as fire breaks. If we do only that, it's going to keep all of the resources we have and manpower we have busy for a long time without looking way further into the forest, including wilderness areas, which I think you suggested. So we agree, but we think that needs to be very strategically located to do the most good, which is where the danger exists near people and in a road system. Second piece is increase herbivores. You know, wildlife management issues are extremely complex. Under state law, these are solely an obligation of the State Department of Fish and Wildlife, and we kind of think you ought to leave it to them. They are the experts on this. The third point is increase road and trail access. Again, we agree totally in having a well-maintained road system in our forests that's available to deal with fire. But we think that has to be strategically identified. It can't be everywhere. We can't really be increasing that network, and let me just give you a few numbers. The Rogue River Siskiyou National Forest alone has 4,400 miles of road today. That's the whole way from here to New York City and halfway back again. They're obligated to maintain it. They can't do it. We need maintenance for a strategic group of those roads. We can't go expanding that, which I think was implied in your statement. The National Forest System overall has 380,000 miles of road today. That's 8 times the length of the interstate highway system. That's enough roads. Maintenance is the issue, not more roads. Increased timber sale programs. This is our stickiest point, Court. We don't believe this statement has a place in this task of reducing fire risk, because in fact it's commercial timber sales through clear cutting and the thick plantation forests that have gotten us into this mess of having a very highly volatile forest system. And there are a lot of scientific studies now. I identify them in the report, my paper that I'll leave with John Jesuit here, that document how the most intensely burned areas are those that have been logged, not those that have not. So we don't disagree with appropriate thinning of forests, where we actually take the small trees and leave the big ones, which tend to burn less because of the thick bark and the long boles and so forth. But but these are not commercial timber sales typically. So not to argue against logging, but it has nothing to do with eliminating fire risk. Your fifth item, dealing with the urban wildland interface and making home sites and properties more fire resistant, we couldn't agree with that more. That is actually the key area where we need to be working. Increase salvage area. We don't think this is really even needed today. The rapid assessment team in 2018 of the Forest Service reported that the timber industry is, quote, not expressing much interest in salvage off national forest lands after the Klondike fire. And even where we do have it, it's those burn charred trees are not what burns. So that is not the explosive fuel load that you refer to. Those burn less. So it's not the burned over forest that we have to worry about the most. It's that thick growth of new forest that burns like gasoline, as our county forester Jim Rogers here has often said. The part we find the most troubling here is when you start dealing with national legislation. You ask to have laws that limit the ability of citizens and groups and governments to intercede in federal decisions here. We think that's a big mistake, that we should have the right to do that. You, I know, are concerned that litigation has held up appropriate kind of logging, and I am too. I checked into that. Only 2% of the timber sales in the country have been litigated. So it's not that big a problem. Likewise, Modify Endangered Species Act. We need that for our salmon, for many other species. It's not an issue with fire prevention. We have recommendations here. And we recommend you, instead of going after those 9 points, that we recommend 3. One is work with property owners to implement fire-wise solutions. We say more about that. Second is review county codes to deal with hazard zoning work. And actually, there was a county effort on this some years ago. It should be resurrected. Number 3, support and encourage appropriate thinning of overgrown plantation areas. I think we would agree on that. Those are the 3 areas that I think we have agreement here, and that you would not get the kind of resistance that you will on these other points that will ultimately lead to just prolonged conflict and disagreement and getting nowhere. So why not focus on what everybody can agree on here and do that? We think those are also the jobs that the commissioners are responsible for. I looked up the responsibilities of county commissioners, and according to the Oregon Secretary of State, it doesn't include lobbying federal legislation as in the items you've had here. I'm being asked to stop, so I'll stop there. I'd love to answer any questions you might have, or to talk to you personally about this court. I've suggested that before.
Well, as I said in my last email, I've always enjoyed our times together. I learn a lot.
Yeah, thank you.
And I mean that with all sincerity. Nobody respects Jim Rogers more than me. I can't offer that I'll match my scientists with the scientists that have information on the other side. 2 quick things here. The fire-wise responsibility that we all have as homeowners, I think, is absolutely critical. What I want the public to know is, be reminded, you take Eagle Creek, for example, that had jumped 1 mile. The Klondike fire on the night of October 14th jumped a ½ mile. And so that has nothing to do with the fire-wise responsibility. It's a hope, it's a measure, it should be a requirement, and we need to work toward that. But the way these fires jump, with what we have in this area, we are under dire straits to properly manage. What I submit to you, Mr. Palmer, is we have not managed our forest well, and we don't get it right. We ain't seen nothing yet. And I hate to say that because I would love to be wrong, because I know the consequences for the citizens of this entire corner of the state. We have the 2021 International Track and Field Championships in Eugene. 192 countries are going to be here. Some 3,000 media. If we have smoke, they're already looking at canceling, and what that will do to the Oregon economy. Even our little economy here, even though we're 4 hours from Eugene, as you know, we have got to prevent these fires. We have got to hit them hard. When you increase a wilderness area, what I'm asking for, concluding with this, a moratorium on wilderness areas, because if we can't get fire access, we can't get firefighters in safely, not to mention get them out safely, we're going to lose the Rogue River Canyon. And that is too great a risk. And the Blossom Bar fire, as a crow flies, got within a quarter mile of my lodge, just below Blossom. And it's an absolute miracle that we didn't all go up in smoke. And that's the 50,000 people that enjoy that roadless area every year, half jet boat and half rafting coming through there. So we'll sit down and talk more. Maybe we'll have a workshop. The community, though, the public needs to be aware of what we're up against here. And I've been there every day, so I want to absolutely promote. We have got to improve.
A real quick comment on the next item, since you mentioned wilderness. Again, the next item is opposing the Oregon Wildlands Act. Based on your comments, I think those might be based on a previous version of that act, which included designating new wilderness area along the Middle Rogue River. That has been dropped out. The current bill has no new wilderness in Curry County included in it. And so I think your concerns...
You would see, we have a letter right here, if I may, Mr. Palmer. This is a letter from Herman Bershiger, who has been a firefighter his entire life. He's the Senate and a logger, which I think gives him some credibility, certainly, in the imperial evidence. And it's just, when we live here, we have some value in what we've learned over 40 or 50 years. And he is very concerned. This is his letter. I'll make sure that it's on the website. Again, he's the Senate Minority Leader from Grants Pass. His people are suffering. Our people are suffering. I'm not saying anything except, well, I've said enough, but thank you very much. I would encourage you to read this letter, though.
The new wilderness designation is not in the bill that we're talking about here, and I thought you might be thinking that it is.
Okay, but fair enough, but there are prospective areas that are being set aside, even on a temporary basis. Well, that in itself keeps access for firefighters out, and it increases the level of risk that we cannot put these fires out early. Again, we could talk on this for a long time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, Schmeier? How's your last name pronounced?
Schmier.
Schmier. I'm sorry.
One of those awful German names. Yeah.
Same with mine. They call me Posh and it's Pash.
Yeah. My name is Ann Schmier. I'm a resident of Port Orford. I am here today to encourage you to consider dropping your opposition to the Oregon Wildlands Act. One of the things I always look at these when we start considering or opposing these types of things is what are the unintended consequences? One of the unintended consequences of opposing this particular Wildlands Act is there's a wonderful gentleman. His name is Frank Moore, and he is a World War II veteran. And there is a Frank Moore steelhead sanctuary that is proposed under this act. It's on the north fork of the Umpqua River, and it's one of these beautiful, pristine areas. I am concerned not only for the lack of designation of this going forward. Frank is in his late 90s. Frank is a rock star among veterans. I've been to a number of different fly fishing shows, expos, and when Frank walks in the door, everyone turns, especially veterans, and they want to have their picture taken with him. I'm concerned that this will not move forward while he is still alive. He is an honorable man. He suffered gravely from PTSD. It wasn't called that in World War II. And he shows veterans a way forward. He is a beacon of hope and of healing. and the value of steelheading, which we value greatly, as a means to providing a healing environment and communing with nature as people who are suffering from PTSD. I'm a child of a veteran who had PTSD, and this hits home very closely for me. My dad was a fly fisherman for steelhead, and one of the reasons why I do the work that I do is that I used to accompany him on the rivers in northern Puget Sound to go fly fishing in the winter, and those fisheries crashed from clear cuts, from pollution, from overfishing, from any of the other pressures. And when he no longer could go fishing and catch fish and was not a productive activity for him, things got really bad for us as a family. So I encourage you to look at the broader consequences of this opposition that you have. There are a number of great projects that should move forward, and I'm really concerned that a lot of things will be thrown under the bus through your opposition that really should go forward, and it would be a grave shame for the veterans of this state to lose this particular designation and honoring a veteran of World War II who has suffered and sacrificed his life and shows a way forward, and through communing with nature and nature therapy, as I call it. So I wish you would reconsider or back down from your opposition for this, so that this and many other projects can move forward.
Ms. Shermer?
And there's a
Commissioner
great
Boyce?
movie about Frank. I'll loan it to you if you promise to give it back to me.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. What was his name again? Frank what?
Frank Moore.
Not heard of him. I would like to have him. Yeah, that's great. I would like to have him meet, and I'm sure he would be incredibly sensitive. Meet the families that lost their home in the Checo Bar fire. I mean, I want to highlight what they went through as well, and you know, and some of those were also veterans, and still they have not been able to get help. And so, can we just have a temporary moratorium on wilderness designations or perspective? You know, prospective, I keep saying. I'm sorry, Mr. Chair.
Lynn
Thank you, Ms.
Tar.
Shermer.
Good morning. My name is Linda Tarr. I live in Port Orford, and I'm here to speak against your statement against the Wildlands Act. I think that this act does some important protections that aren't part of your narrative. It protects the wild and scenic sections of the river against dredging for gold, which, you know, we know that that's terrible for salmon. You know, if you want all of the efforts to increase the Chinook runs to have any chance of coming to fruition, you don't need people in there dredging for gold, which causes more silt. It destroys the bed of the rivers. That is part of this act. Another part of this act would be to rename a creek that's currently called Squaw Creek. That's a very offensive name to a lot of people in this area, and it changes that. That's a very positive part of this act. Your narrative about wildernesses cause fire is just not true. If you...
I did. Okay.
And it won't prevent fires to prevent more wilderness areas. Also, the details of the bill are important. If you want to just make a resolution against something that isn't even based on what it actually is, you're really discounting a lot of work that a lot of really serious people have put into this act. There's been a compromise between our senators, Wyden and Merkley, who are very much for this, and I'm blanking on the name of the Republican senator from...
Greg Walden.
Thank you. There's been a compromise. They've come to this over a period of a lot of work to come to a bill that they can all agree on. And I think we have to thank the designation of wild and scenic rivers for a lot of the beautiful areas that people are attracted to in this area. If it weren't for those restrictions, there could have been clear cuts right down to the riverside, and to increase those protections into the elk is something that's very important to me. So please don't vote against something that you're not even considering all the details of.
Commissioner Boyce?
Thank you, Ms. Starr. To the extent the Illinois River and the Chetco have been affecting the watershed with these fires that we've had, we don't know what the long-term consequences are. We're hurting on rainfall. 80% of the Brookings Harbor watershed has been affected by the Chetco bar. And so when you take these, perhaps some of the most pristine rivers in the world, certainly in North America, and they suffer this kind of damage, and certainly, ma'am, I did not imply, or certainly didn't mean to imply, if I may, that wilderness areas cause fires. No, the lack of access after the fires are started by lightning, which is 85% of the fires in Oregon. We lived that July 15th. After those fires are started, if they can't have access to get firefighters in and out safely, it explodes. They can't, if they don't get it in the first few days, maybe the first 10 days, they cannot stop the fire. We're living proof of the amount of acres we lost just in those last two catastrophic fires. Again, they're not normal burns, which are normally good for our backcountry. The amount of acres we've lost is because we're not managing our forest well. We are not focusing enough on fire prevention. I'm concerned that the wilderness areas and that lack of access will be unintended consequences like we can't measure other than what we have right before us historically. And that should scare anybody. Thank you.
Jim Rogers.
My name is Jim Rogers, and I'm a professional forester based in Port Orford. I have a BS degree in forest land management from Syracuse University, and I've been a practicing forester since 1964. A good deal of my experience is centered around managing land that has been burned in forest fires. I'd like to discuss one area in particular, the forest around Forks of Salmon, west of Wairika, California. I had a contract with the Forest Service to examine this area of approximately 7,000 acres that had been burned in lightning storms after having been clear-cut and reforested during a 4 to 5 year period of my survey. All of the terrain that had been stocked with old-growth Douglas fir and sugar pine had been approximately 500 years old when logged. Many of the old-growth stumps showed old fire scars from former forest fires that had survived the damp and distant past. The clear-cut stands had been reburned, and subsequent lightning fires. The reburned areas had been destroyed. There were almost no seedlings or saplings that had survived the burn. They burned like napalm. The soil structure was incapable of supporting tree seedlings. Evidence is overwhelming that the climate is becoming hotter and drier. Unfortunately, much of the land in Curry County has been logged and converted to tree plantations that appear to be destined to burn. Maybe not. Maybe we're being granted a reprieve. But I, for one, would rather not risk converting more of our valuable forests to highly inflammable tree plantations. And I've got that's what I had to say about that.
Thanks,
If
Jim.
you have any questions you'd like to discuss this further, I would be honored.
Just to hear you remind the public the extent of the damage to the soil because of the temperature of the hotter fires, I think is very noteworthy, and it sets us back even further on those particular fires. I think you agree with that. Just when they're burning 2,000 degrees instead of a normal fire burning 1,200 degrees, it burns the soil down. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Although you need to be at the mic. He's going to need to be at the microphone. I'm sorry. Everything has to be on the record, sir. So before you comment, if you just step back to the microphone, please.
Yeah, I agree with court's description of the forest fire, of the soil after a fire like this has gone through. The things you've got solid small trees, the height of this room are a little higher, and when the wind has blown through there and the humidity's down about 10%, and it's been blazing hot sun for days or weeks, that stuff just burns like napalm, I said. And logging more isn't going to change that, because if you go in there and you clear cut it, you take the trees that were burned and then you take the rest of them because it's cheaper that way. You might as well get them all. Then you fire comes through, it just blows all that stuff up and destroys it. So to go in there and log again just after a fire is a big mistake. And I'm not against logging. I've been a timber manager for years. I was timber manager for Western States Plywood and for TAMCO, and forester for U.S. Plywood, forester for Weyerhaeuser. So I've seen this stuff. I'm not a radical environmentalist like you might think that I am. So
I don't think anyone thinks that.
I appreciate your attention, and I would appreciate the opportunity to discuss this more in a hearing or some other.
We need you at the table, sir.
Well, I will also agree with that. We've spoken many times. I'm sure you know Larry Ismert, Lee Riddle. These are all lifetime loggers and foresters as well. And I think to have that knowledge at a table when decisions are being made on how we should deal with our forests and their management is imperative for the county, not only to understand the forests, but the winds and the management of those winds and the humidities and everything that goes into making fires and stopping fires. So I would appreciate your input when we have these meetings. I would welcome you to the meetings.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Dave Lacey?
Hello, Commissioners. My name is Dave Lacey. I live in Gold Beach. Just a real quick comment. I want to talk about the Wildlands Act, but first just mention that I think the Rogue River is a real gem of the Pacific Northwest. We've had gangbusters Chinook fisheries in the fall the last couple years, and just a couple weeks ago I managed to hook and land and release 3 monster steelhead on the Rogue, so I think it's doing pretty well, actually. But I'm here to support the Wildlands Act and urge you guys to not write a letter against it. As Tim mentioned before, there has been a compromise already to remove the more controversial wilderness areas designations, and so I think at this point it's been a compromise that's worth supporting, not rejecting. Some of the things that are happening in Curry County in that bill are just some wild and scenic protections on some of the tributaries to the Rogue. And these tributaries are super important because it provides the cool, clear water that our salmon and steelhead need. So supporting wild and scenic designation on those tribs is important. So a lot of this Wildlands Act and stuff that's happening on our federal lands supports our outdoor recreation industry. And so I'd just like to mention a few statistics and some things about that. In Oregon, we have 172,000 jobs in the outdoor recreation industry, and in comparison, the wood products industry and logging only provides 58,000 jobs, so it's very significant for our state. It brings in $16.4 billion to our economy in Oregon, and brings in $749 million to our tax base, our tax for the state of Oregon. And a lot of this outdoor recreation happens on our federal lands because they are protected, because of wild and scenic designations, because of wilderness areas. So my company, South Coast Tours, employs 6 guides to play on these rivers. We're a partner in the Forest Service. Granted, it's only seasonal, so it's half of the year, but these jobs provide people with leadership abilities. They're outdoors, getting exercise. It leads them to other jobs. So I think it's important, even if they are part-time. We do pay them very well, actually. We've seen growth every year in the tourism economy, even through recessions. So it's a very strong, it's one of the leading economies in the state. It's not going backwards, it's going forwards. When I came in, it was quite a coincidence that Court had a packet for me, and I just wanted to mention this. It's a plan for new economic sector of sustainable nature-based tourism in Curry County. It was created back in 1995.
And you read every page?
I just started into it. I just got it. It actually comes with a VHS tape, which I don't have the technology to play, so I won't be able to see it. But one quote, it says, "Very few places in the United States can claim to have resources as exciting as 1 million acres, including 3 wilderness areas, 5 wild and scenic rivers, 100 miles of exciting shoreline, and only 23,000 people." Not much has changed there, but we have gotten more wilderness, which I think is awesome. Like copper salmon, which a lot of you guys worked on here, so it's actually better than this now. It's something we can hang our hat on. So I think if you guys would spend more time supporting wild and scenic designations in wilderness areas instead of fighting our federal partners, I think it would be more productive. So that's what I'd like to urge you to do here.
Commissioner Boyce.
Mr. Lacey, you would need to quantify that, fighting our federal partners, okay? Back to my 3.5-page letter there, supporting the new supervisor. What happened to Chetco Bar Fire, I cannot support, because it got out of control after 5 days, me begging the district ranger, put it out now. And she had the people that could have done that. Now, I don't know what restrictions were on her, but you know the consequences of 192,000 acres. You and I share the same love for this area, as do 90% of the people that live here. But I have to fiercely look at the big picture and do everything I possibly can to protect it. So when the federal managing agents are wrong, I'm going to tell them, and it's working. And I'm going to keep up that responsibility. It's a little bit humbling, but they are listening. They know that we've got to do something different. I want to read something real quick, because I know you, both of our interests in tourism and visitor promotion. I've never had that kind of luck salmon fishing, but I think you have a knack. This is the Oregon Tourism Commission. Travel Oregon came out in July 2018, before the Klondike fire, right about the time of the Klamathon, the Natchez, the Carr, you know, both the Granite and the Klondike, the Great Creek. I mean, all those fires hit at the same time. And I support the Forest Service with the decisions that they were making at the time, with the absolute fight to try and get the supplies and the resources that they needed. And the competition was off the chart. Okay, anyway, executive summary. This is 2017. Oregon Tourism Report. 1.2 million acres burned during the Oregon's 2017 wildfire season. Again, separate that out. This does not include 2018. Smoke from these fires was particularly widespread, causing 451 unique, unhealthy air quality readings across the state of Oregon. 65% increase over the previous high number of readings between 16 years, or 2000-2016. According to the respondents to the business and organization survey conducted as part of the study, the Eagle Creek Fire, Columbia River Gorge, and Chetco Bar Fire, Curry County on the southern Oregon coast, had the most impact, followed by several, again, this is 2017, followed by several fires and fire complexes in the central Oregon Cascades. Skipping here, economic impacts, there was $51.5 million lost in visitor spending, attributed, or if you want to use the word attributable, to the Oregon wildfires in 17. $16 million in earnings for employees and working proprietors was lost If you're interested in statistics, as was 368,000 and 1.5 million in local and state tax receipts. Now I can go on. This is a very reputable study. We support the Oregon tourism. More responsibility on us to understand the difference between normal burn cycles and catastrophic fires. And I appreciate very much what you do. Give me a report on that. That was back in the EGRIT days. What was the name of that company?
Yeah, it was EGRIT, 1995.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. The fires are horrible. I just would like to work towards positive solutions that we can all maybe agree on. I think what Tim proposed was pretty good.
And what I proposed was pretty good?
Yeah, some of it.
Okay.
Yeah,
thank you,
let's
David.
just work together on things that we agree on. That's all.
Okay, I'm with you.
Thank you.
I think a lot of the issues that we have right now are, you know, we have Washington's attention because I think they know they have to do something with these fires. Do I think that our people that live in this county, that understand the issues of this county and the way that fires should be fought in this county, should have a seat at that table? Yes, and I think it's time that we demand that Washington and whoever makes the decisions on how we fight these fires include Curry County in those conversations, because it's a unique area that we live in to fight these fires.
And you're totally right. And I think your dogged persistence has paid off on a lot of that stuff. So.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, Commissioner Boyce, we're done with comments on this.
Yes, thank you.
So we're going to move on then to...
We need to decide whether there's going to be action on that.
Yeah, that's what I was...
We keep getting in trouble.
No, that's what I was saying. We're done with comments. Did you want to have action on this? Or?
Yes. Do you need a motion, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
So moved. Do we accept this as a resolution for the Curry County Board of Commissioners?
Is this in resolution form? I'm looking at it, it's a letter.
Yeah, I thought we were going to make this into a different form.
No, that was the previous letter. Okay, I could amend that. Do we accept my letter that went into the Eugene Register Guard on the Rogue River Wildlands Act, along with Senator Bershiger, who represents basically all of Josephine County as a state senator? Combine those two letters, letter support from the Curry County Board of Commissioners. It doesn't have to be a resolution. It's a resolution in the sense that I'm asking for support. Oh, sorry.
My take on this, as you know, a lot of this was brought in and put in on Thursday, Friday of last week, over the weekend. As you know, I hope you realize I'm not one for kicking cans down the road, but I would like to reread all this and put it together. And again, not kicking a can down the road, but I would like to read through all of this and make sure that I'm comfortable with everything.
With all due respect, I think that's exactly what we're doing. The fire season's coming at us hot and heavy. Thank you.
So do we have any motions in? I'm sorry.
So we didn't get a second. I don't think.
Are we on E and F? 6E and F, is that what we're discussing?
We're on 6F. Thanks.
And you're changing it from a resolution to a letter of support? Is that, or do you still want to leave it as
Not a letter, but just support in general of the opposition as written to the Rogue River Wildlands Act due to the increased level of fire, major catastrophic, mega fire, nuclear fire, whatever you want to call it.
Commissioner Gold?
Some of this is kind of based on a false premise that, sorry.
Please, Mr. Boyce, please.
Because part of our area was taken out of the Wildlands Act. So I think that I'm going to agree with Mr. Pash. I couldn't support this as written. And I would like to see maybe a resolution where facts are delineated. So.
Well, I'm going to say that I'm not saying I'm not going to support it as written. Again, what I'd like to say is a lot of this was put up in the last few days, and I would like to look through it again and have time to read and understand what I'm agreeing to before I agree to it. And I would ask for some latitude on that. Again, I'm not one for kicking cans down roads, but I would hope you'd understand, Commissioner Boyce, that I'd just like to make sure I read through this completely and understand it before I agree or disagree to it.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Chair. To say that it's not factual or to insinuate that, I hope that by proper review, thorough review, that you will be confident that it is factual, backed up and supported by Senator Bershiger's challenge. Yes, a lot of it's outside of Curry County, I understand that, but it's part of the Rogue River, which is our absolute cherished, sacred heritage, and I don't want to mess around on what our position is for the citizens of this county and what the consequences are if we make a mistake on this. And so thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. And I'd like to do the same, if you don't mind, on G as well.
Okay. I did give you a lot to read.
Okay.
I understand. Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Can I just have one comment on the wildfire threat? That was actually written by the Jackson County Commissioners a year ago. So I can't speak for them, obviously, but I can offer you that they would say after the last year, not unlike the Oregon tourism study, that they're saying, hey, it's growing. The danger is growing. And so not unlike Josephine County, incredibly well organized. They stay up on the issues. They are solid, and there's no question that they have the majority of the people behind them, especially when it comes to the smoke issue.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so Ms. Schmelzer, if we could move this for the next meeting, can we get a motion for that?
Yes, and then I'll actually recraft that into a resolution that we could sign if the board so chooses, rather than have a Jackson County one for consideration.
Not to be resistant, the letter that they have on these two issues, or maybe you want to postpone the public lands natural cause fire letter as well. The way they have them written, just to give them the support, would take a lot less staff time. I mean, I'm 50-50, but I think that's the way to go. Just to simply say, we appreciate, we respect, we've reviewed, researched your work, and we're with you.
So you're asking the board to support what Jackson County did, not do that on behalf of Curry County?
That's the way I understand it. Just we're giving a letter of support that the action that they're taking is we agree with.
And then you just do it in general principle. It's not necessary. Yes, thank you.
All right. So yeah, let's go ahead and move that for the next meeting then, and that'll give me time to look at what we're all agreeing to, or not agreeing to. All right. Public. Let me see. HB. Would that also include H then? Correct.
I would be okay with that. It's not that's not the longest of the four documents, but it would be up to you, Mr. Chair, if you want to read it or offer it to the public today or later.
If you wouldn't mind, I'd like to move it again to the next one, and that way there we can address all four as one.
At the same time, but they'd still be approved.
One, but yeah,
got you. Thank you.
At the same time. Is that fine with you, Commissioner Gold?
I'm just kind of confused here. Do you want all of this put into one? It seems to me that would be the most efficient way to do it, into one resolution or whatever.
It's going to be a letter of support.
Yeah, a letter of support for those items.
Is that what you're looking for, Commissioner Boyce? I want to make sure that that's what.
No, but I would like to think about that, because Commissioner Gold might be. She might be correct. They're different issues, though, and they're different. You know, one's a fire threat. One's what causes the fires. You know, the better the public is aware, the more we can say, yeah, by the way, here's why you need to firewise your home and help your neighbors. So it all comes back to public awareness, and just one of the huge, I mean, 2 years ago, we had thought we'd lose this much land to catastrophic fire.
That's why I got involved. Never
Thank
believed
you.
it. All right. So can we leave that open then, and how we're going to address? Perfect. Thank you. All right. Moving on to I. We have a couple more public comments. Carol Lehu?
I'd like to hear your comments on this letter before I make my comments. And
Okay.
discuss this issue.
Mr. Barnes?
Same, I would like to hear the committee's comments first and then afterwards, please.
Okay. Commissioner Boyce?
I got a question for the two of you that's a technical question. Do you have trouble getting all the agenda items to download fairly quickly?
No, I pull up the county's website on here and I go in through there on the agenda items and then I open the packet.
Pick them up quick? Okay.
Snap them right up.
Yes, I thank you, Mr. Chair. Forgive me one moment. You know, we've been watching this. Ms. Smeltzer, you and Commissioner Lily Morgan kindly, I think about a year ago, called in on this issue and what it means for Southwest Oregon. And I remember very well. This might have been a private conversation on the phone later on, but if you didn't say it during that call-in, which, of course, we greatly appreciated yours and the commissioner's time to volunteer there. We know that this issue was coming at Josephine County rather quickly, and you were right in the middle of it to deal with it. I remember once you told me that there were retired folks, older couples, correct me if I'm wrong, that as they leave, one of them would sit down in the passenger side of the car and stay hidden so that as they left, it would look like to potential troublemakers that somebody was at home. So whereas if they both left and were visible, do I have that correct? It was a risk thing that
She would lay down. They would put the seat back and lay down.
somewhat common.
In Josephine County, they have a lot of problems.
Yes. So I'm following the statistics on this and where it's going, what it means to Curry County, what the issues are, and then we have the federal government watching everything we're doing. This recommendation by Joe County Commissioner Dan DeYoung seemed to gain a little momentum to suggest to the the federal government that we are starting to police a little bit. I got an interesting comment this morning that some of the numbers are going down in Curry County, and so maybe to the extent some of us were alarmed a year ago or even a year and a half ago, maybe that was invalid. What I do know, the three best states in America for growing pot due to the climate is California, Oregon, and Washington. Do I have that right? Not Colorado.
Yes.
And, California, Nevada, and Oregon. Washington is number 5, I think. So I'm not a marijuana proponent. I am at all. I think there's no surprise to that. However, the more I research and learn from some of the studies, in particular, by the way, the little country of Israel, the medical aspects and uses are tremendously well documented. The biggest concern I have on this whole issue, whether it does take a different turn and ultimately grows dramatically, as a crow flies, we are the Curry County, or just say the California-Oregon border, Curry County-Del Norte border, we're 80 miles as a crow flies from the northern edge of Humboldt County. And there are some real issues in that area. So when you say 80 miles, and here's just, if you Google marijuana farm in Humboldt County or sex abuse trafficking in Emeralds Triangles, secret pot gardens, Humboldt County, just let me read just a quick examples, a few quick examples here. Humboldt County is pretty close to the middle of nowhere. So when workers from a nearby pot farm showed up, battalion chief, fire chief knew something was wrong. Then you can read the story. Perhaps the most significant one here, this story was, this is out of the Emerald Triangle. This story was produced by Reveal from the Center for Investigative Reporting. Humboldt County reported, this is almost impossible to believe, Humboldt County, I think it was in 2016, reported 352 missing people. Again, it's only 80 miles from Curry County, other than the county and the state. And then the last one with harvest season, trimigants, I just learned that term a year ago, flock to California's pot, and then it gives some rather distressing statistics there. So my point is this: Curry County's pretty quiet right now. Even though the north end and south end of our county does not have, in my view, adequate law enforcement. Absolutely, it's not about marijuana consumption. It is, do we have illegal growers? Will we have illegal growers in the future? And with the, you know, if you look at the lobby around the state of Oregon, the legal growers, they are really responsible and they are trying to do the right thing. And I think they need supported. There is a legitimate issue of the mom and pops growers. We're not talking about somebody that has 3 or 4 plants out in their backyard and isn't bothering anyone, for goodness sakes. And this may not be, it may not generate any income or any measurable income for Curry County. However, it would be very difficult for me to not support Josephine County in this, because we need their support in public lands management. We need their support in the salmon and trout enhancement issues. We need their support in tourism promotion. And I know all their commissioners very well, and they are top-notch people, and they are dedicated to doing the right thing for their citizens. So I'm going to support with everything I have Commissioner DeYoung on this, and hope that he prevails, and hope that the state. And one other person, friend, mentioned the other day, why not have the state of Oregon, or even at the county level, have places where the growers can legitimately deposit money into, which is now blocked by the federal government, as you know, into, I may not have that exactly right, but into local banking establishments. So there's some work we can do here to make this better, to regulate the even if it's a small number of growers, we'll get it done. That's all I have for now.
Mr. Meltzer, I have a comment, or a question for you. Do you know, is there a limit when this tax would start on growers in the state?
I can't remember offhand.
Isn't it 12 and up or something like that?
Oh, the number of plants?
Yes.
So if you're a recreational grower, it's 12 and up. However, I do have to say, I did speak with someone yesterday, and they're going to be proposing some amendments to the bill. So I believe the letter is drafted to say you're supporting it conceptually, but they are proposing, there's been conversation about making it a statewide bill instead of just for Southwest Oregon. And then I do just want to remind you that that bill is considered a Law Enforcement Stabilization Act, because although the money would be coming from the marijuana industry, it's targeted towards law enforcement fighting crimes associated with drugs anyway. So for example, when I was speaking with the sheriff, he was talking about, we were discussing the problem that we're having with opioids and how we don't have staff dedicated towards that. Our numbers, if this would go through as written, it does not bring us that much money, but it is enough to give us one law enforcement person that could be trained or is capable to help fight the opioid problem that we have. I'm sorry. Like you said, there's going to be some changes past. What Josephine County was asking on this one was just basically to, again, conceptually support the fact that this would be brought forward for a House bill.
Commissioner Gold?
Oh, I didn't have my hand up, but I am in support of this. Having worked in the schools for many years, I saw what pot could do to the kids. So
I think to put an extra burden on some of the locals here for their grows needs to be weighed against the good that this will do. I see that, you know, having 12 plants or under isn't going to provide any burden on anyone here. But What I do see is the amount of money that would be raised through this bill that's pending now, or what we've been handed. And I would like to see any amendments that are made to it. But the way that it is written now, I think I would have support for. Again, I think after learning more about this, we've received some information from Mr. Barnes and some other people here in Curry County. You know, the burden there would be a burden placed on some of the people here in Curry County, and I think the amount of growers in Curry County is minimal, and the revenue sources for this are currently diminishing as we speak. However, I think we have to look at the greater good, not only for Curry County, but Southwest Oregon. And I think that the revenue sources that this would bring, and the possibility of some sort of additional law enforcement to protect this county would outweigh the amount of burden it would place on a group of growers. And for that, I'm sorry. But again, I think our job is to look at the overall good for everyone in the county and in the state of Oregon. So do we have a motion? Oh, I'm sorry. We had comments. Excuse me, Mr. Barnes.
Hey, I'm David Barnes. I wrote you, I went back and I reviewed Commissioner DeYoung's statements from the other day, and I've also done some little bit of research on the commissioner and what's happening. And Commissioner DeYoung, it can best be stated, as a pot warrior. He's still fighting the reefer madness wars. Up in September of last year, Josephine County just had a case decided where they sued the state of Oregon to try to prevent the implementation of marijuana in their county, even though 3/4 of the people in the county on a referendum were against it. He's still in favor of it. I'd like to, I sent you something this morning. In just the last 3 months, there's been a new snapshot come out. Curry County's lost 15% of our pot patients. That's going to be, we don't have the large growers over there. I'm going to say this as kindly and nicely as I can. Many people in things that I've read about Commissioner DeYoung outright call him a liar. Okay, they just call him a liar. His numbers are not valid, and they accuse him of lying. I'll accuse him of being disingenuous when he came here. He put a number before you of $180,000 a year. This county will be lucky to achieve $20,000 in tax revenue for marijuana. Ms. Schmelzer, if you believe otherwise, I will argue it with you. But simple mathematics, if you, let's say you have 5 fishermen out on the river, okay? Game warden shows up. There's 11 fish sitting on the ground. Do they all get tickets for being over the limit? No, one of them does. Not all the people in Curry County are 285 people now. Not many of them are going to be taxed on this. We're going to bring in $4,000 possibly. You have growers in Curry County right now who can't grow because they can't get their licenses, are in a state of suspension or a state of idleness because the state can't provide people to come down and inspect their farms. Sockeye across the river from us here is buying the pot that they sell, not in Curry County. They're not growing it on their own farm. They're buying it from out of county. They're buying it from the people over in Jackson and Josephine and up in North Bend because they can't grow it here. So I think that, the numbers that you were given are highly misleading, and, I will, and a falsehood, basically. They're just a falsehood. I'd like, we talked about, Commissioner Boyce mentioned at the last meeting how Curry County is jumping up and being one of the leaders in the world in getting our pot to market. Curry County is not even in the top 10 producers of marijuana in the state of Oregon. Okay, so that's just disingenuous in itself. I'd like to read to you from an op-ed piece from the Curry County, or from the Grants Pass Courier. Their editor, Scott Stoddard, said, if anyone in Curry happens to come across this editorial, please heed this advice. The last place you want to turn for guidance on the regulation of marijuana is Josephine County. They're trying to sell us a bill of goods and they came in here and they have you actually believing now they're BS. Commissioner DeYoung's BS. He came before you, he presented false and misleading numbers. Those numbers are not valid. If you want to go with them, then you're gullible, and I feel sorry, and I question you going forward. It says in the same article, it's a fact that they could not have been honest gotten this far by being honest, open, and transparent, and that the only way they were ever going to achieve their predetermined goals of banning cannabis was through deceit. These are all registered. It's a gentleman who came before you 2 weeks ago or a week or so ago and made his presentation. You know, the information he provided you is just patently false and misleading, and I really hope that you're wise enough not to fall for it and to get onto his bandwagon. I ask you to please do not support this matter, you know, at least until a new bill comes out of the Senate and the House. You know, you talk about law enforcement. House Bill 1540 or Senate Bill 1544 provides for a trust fund for law enforcement who have concerns about marijuana. All our sheriff has to do is apply for money, and if there's any there, he can get some. It's not a problem in our county. Our county's facing enough other problems that we should be worrying about. We shouldn't be worrying about people over in Jackson and Josephine and their pot problems. You know, worry about our own problems here. We got a homeless problem. We got an opioid problem. You want to bring in money for law enforcement? There's an article in the Curry Pilot last year. 1,800 units. I don't know if that's per month or per year in opioid consumption by the residents of Curry County. A penny a milligram, that's $396,000 that's going to bring in. Opioid is an addictive drug. These people are going to use this every single month. So we're going to get whatever the rate is, the interim is, we get at least $396,000 by taxing opioids at a penny a milligram. You know, that's where we should be focusing on, something that actually is a problem in Curry, not some potential future problem or somebody else's problem on the other side of the state. Thank you.
Carol Layton, Gold Beach. I normally don't come up and speak my mind, but I am so disturbed by this. I come from a police family as well. My brother-in-law, 30 plus years in Newark, New Jersey, which is a big city with a serious crime problem. When you talk about law enforcement stability, you're talking about charging medical marijuana growers that grow for a small amount of patients. That's not going to give you the money to support a law enforcement position. This is not our problem. We have enough problems, as David Barnes said. We don't need to support Jackson County and Josephine County jackboots that want to change the laws of this state. This is a medical marijuana recreational state. People have gotten off opioids with marijuana. I don't think we should trade that in to support Josephine County and their cannabis cowboys. Thank you.
Commissioner Boyce, you want to turn?
No.
DeYoung, Commissioner DeYoung. I thought I heard Mr. Barnes say that 3/4 of the people voted no. I thought 70% voted yes on taxing marijuana. The growth under the certain guidelines, and they understood the vote.
So there's a little history on the vote. So as far as legalization in Josephine County goes, it actually failed, but it didn't fail by enough votes to not be legal. So it was within that 5%. So by default, the legalization of recreational marijuana in Josephine County became legal. Then they put it to an advisory question to their people as to whether or not they should regulate recreational and medical. Well, they said commercial marijuana. So they put that to an advisory vote, and that was 3/4 of the people voted to regulate commercial marijuana in Josephine County.
Wasn't related to the tax or a tax.
It was not related to the tax.
I misunderstood. Thank you.
Now,
okay.
Going though, then
Commercial, not medical.
it was commercial, so it was anything that was, and the way they described it, it did end up actually including the medical. So, because they would exempt a certain number of plants per person, but after that, if you were doing it commercially, then they would tax it. Or I'm sorry, it would be regulated. And then in fall, they did another advisory question, and that was whether or not it should be taxed. And that one too passed, I believe, and it was 3/4 of the people basically that voted again said that yes, it should be taxed.
Thank you. When it's characterized as a law enforcement stabilization act, do you feel that is legitimate to the people? I mean, when they read that, it just it kind of makes me stop for a second.
Well,
puzzling.
My understanding is the intent when it was drafted was to try and, at Southwest Oregon, a lot of the counties are trying to figure out how they're going to fund law enforcement. And the rationale at the time was this is one way to fund law enforcement. Farms Inc., which is the recreational marijuana growers that actually sued Josephine County, they actually came out with an amendment, or are proposing an amendment to the bill that would say that the marijuana is taxed as it leaves the county, not the actual canopy size or per plant, but saying if marijuana is leaving the county, that is the point where it should be taxed. So Farms Inc. I do know that they had sued Josephine County. I do know that they also worked with Josephine County to revise their regulations. I actually worked with Farms Inc. And we
Can you give us a little detail on that?
Sure, we came to an agreement with Farms Inc. on regulations. So what they do in Josephine County is they no longer will allow new marijuana grows, commercial marijuana grows, on rural residential property. So you would have to prove that you are grandfathered, basically, that you're a legal non-conforming use in order to grow commercially on rural residential properties. Josephine County also proposed in annual compliance a certificate ordinance where every producer, every marijuana producer, and again commercially, would have to go through a compliance certificate. They would have to prove that they're in compliance with all local and state laws. And Farms Inc. is actually the one that came back and said, we'll support this provided it applies to all marijuana businesses, dispensaries, processors, etc. And that did pass. So that was in November. So that law, or I'm sorry, those rules passed that they actually have to, any marijuana business is going to have to go through annually, have the county look at them to determine whether or not they are still in compliance.
I appreciate that you're allowing this discussion. This is absolutely, in my opinion, invaluable. So I interrupted you, but then I want to come back. That's related to a couple of things you just said there. So.
Well, that's just it. They've had a couple questions they put to the voters. The vote was always basically 3/4 of the voters have been favorable towards regulating the marijuana and then taxing the marijuana as well. Like I said, they did work with Farms Inc. on these last set of rules that were all adopted in November. They become effective February 25th, and that is the one that says you can only grow in those rural residential zones, if you're...
That's what I wanted to ask about. You were basically there from ground zero, and you've seen this evolution in less than 2 years, correct? Or a little over 2 years, excuse me.
What happened in Josephine County is they weren't prepared for the rules when it became legal. So they didn't have rules in place. So they've spent a good 2 years trying to formulate those rules, going back and forth, lawsuits, discussions, public hearings, and then they finally got the rules on the books that they felt was a good compromise with everyone. There's a lot of people just don't want any growing. And I do have to say that, speaking on behalf of, I can't speak on behalf of the commissioners, but I can tell you from my conversations with them, they're not anti-marijuana. They realize there's a value to the industry. They were hit with so much what some people call the green rush, where you actually had a lot of people from out of the area coming in, and it was for these commercial grows. A lot of them did not go through the OLCC or the state process, and what they saw was it really disrupted their neighborhoods. A lot of their land is in rural residential, so it really disrupted neighborhoods where we saw people that
had family farms that had been there forever moving away. You had a lot of people complaining about gunfire and activity and cars coming all night. I mean, it became a neighborhood issue, and that triggered a lot of the discussions and a lot of the reasons why they put the land use rules in place. But there's also the law enforcement. We had growers asking for protection from law enforcement, and we weren't able to help
Protection
them.
from?
Law enforcement. So if somebody was robbing them or doing stuff to their property, you know, there was no law enforcement to respond to that. So that prompted many of those growers to actually want the support of law enforcement. You know, people that would get beat up and law enforcement couldn't respond. So my understanding of Mr. DeYoung's proposal was we need to fund law enforcement, and this was a creative way that the people who were putting the added strain on law enforcement actually paid for those services.
Willingly. Mostly.
There's growers that oppose it, there's growers that support it.
So on the rural residential restriction, did that squeeze out the small growers, to your knowledge, generally?
No, because in Josephine County, the rural residential land use rules still allow the medical marijuana growers to grow within the state's legal limits, and then it allows anyone, you know, recreationally, you can grow 12 or fewer plants. So it did not touch those growers either.
So is this money, question, is this money earmarked for law enforcement, or is a portion of it earmarked for law enforcement, and then there are other earmarks as well?
The way the House bill is written, it was earmarked for law enforcement.
I read this morning, also one of the things I read was about the complaints that they received over there. And Commissioner DeYoung talking about a 4-inch stack of complaints on his desk about marijuana turned out to be a 3/4-inch stack of complaints that was actually letters, most of which were people that were in favor of it. To say that, you know, to tax people, to tax the legal growers to enforce rules against, you know, how does taxing legal growers enforce rules against non-legal growers? You know, it doesn't. It's really nothing. Like I've said once before, all you're doing now is you're allowing people, you're allowing the old, it's the old West again. It's the cattle barons coming in and buying the township, buying the law officers, and having them go out and knock out the other people who they don't like. You know, it's no different than the old West is what this proposes to do. You know, a few people are now legal, they have some power, they have some money, and they're buying government officials. You know, that's all they're doing, and they're knocking the small people out of the business. A year from now, mark my words, you're going to see Philip Morris in here, and they're going to be the only growers in the state of Oregon.
Commissioner Boyce?
I'm getting to know Commissioner DeYoung pretty well, and I bet one of the fingers on my hand that nobody would buy him off under any circumstances, and I'll stand firm on that. And I do want to apologize, Mr. Barnes, if I ever come across that I said Curry County has mass exodus of exporting. I meant the region, this area, because it is such a healthy growing area, and there's times in Grants Pass, excuse me, Josephine County, correct me if I'm wrong, you can't rent a U-Haul. And one more thing, okay, go ahead.
The last meeting when we were here, you put up your 19 points again on the wall, up on the screen here.
No.
You put up a piece at the last meeting.
Yes, the 26 issues.
Yes, you put up a piece with the issues. On that there was a line. If you go back and look at that, you can read your own handwriting. There was a line in there. The Curry County
industrial marijuana
is growing, is fast approaching being the leader of export in the state of Oregon. Well, it was in your statement last week.
I would like to recruit you to help me rephrase that, because of those 28 issues, they're continually changing as I learn and as our county evolves in a variety, per your point, of different issues.
We haven't had one single solution yet, sir.
Yeah, I need help. So, and also, no, that was my final deal there. I did have some more questions for you. Quick comment, of all the reasons you're here. If you go ahead and look at the clock, I'll back down. Thank you. I'm done on this issue.
Did you have more questions of Ms. Schmelzer?
No.
Because I looked at the clock to know what time it is.
Okay.
Commissioner Boyce doesn't
I
mean
appreciate
that I'm trying
the-
to cut you off. It's a natural human reaction to look at clocks, especially when we're approaching lunchtime.
I just think I've used up more than my share of time. No hard feelings, Mr. Chair. I think you've allowed, as I said a few minutes ago, you've allowed some extra time on this. It's obviously a very critical issue, and I'm ready to make a motion that we support Josephine County.
I'll second that.
Any further comment? I will comment with this, Mr. Barnes. I appreciate the work you put into this, and I appreciate the work that you donate to this county. What I want to say is, I hope this doesn't offend you personally or anyone in this group. If something that Ms. Schmelzer said in her presentation moments ago was that they were overrun Green Run or whatever it was.
Green Rush.
The Green Rush. I wonder how many people would not have applied for licenses if this tax had been in place pre-license registration. How many people would have not registered? So I think as we grow through this process, there are going to be people that feel like they're being picked on, and they may be being picked on. I don't mean to single anyone out. But again, I feel like if the counties would have had their laws in place for this green rush, as it's been stated, I don't know of too many people that would not have applied for a license for that, with that included.
Thank you very much, sir. And I from the way the wind is blowing, this is going forward, I would hope, Ms. Schmelzer, that when we put this before the public, that we use right numbers, not the fabricated falsehoods that Commissioner DeYoung presented to this board. Those numbers are an absolute lie. They're a fantasy. You know, he says he doesn't smoke pot, and I wondered, you know, I doubt it. After what he came
Those
to...
are personal comments. Thank
Yes, they
you.
are.
All right, so
I have one more comment. The information DeYoung presented listed every single medical marijuana grower in Curry County as paying for the tax. That is not true. 343 was his number. That's how he came up with the 90 whatever thousand for your sergeant. There are not that many commercial over 12 plant medical grows in Curry County. That's where the misstatement comes from. The numbers aren't accurate. It's dishonest. Thank you.
Commissioner Boyce.
Mr. Barnes, could you, would you mind offering how, if we pass this, it would affect you, and maybe you could somewhat speak for other responsible medical marijuana users, how it would affect you?
Not in the least.
Okay, thank you.
It wouldn't affect me in the least.
Okay.
It would affect me as a resident of Curry County.
It wouldn't?
It would affect me as a resident of Curry County, that it affects me because I see my fellow residents of Curry County being lied to and having something forced upon them based on lies. And that's just the end of the day, While I may have misspoken and Mr. DeYoung may not be bought, he certainly was not honest when he came before you.
All right, so we have a motion and a second. Any further comment? Commissioner Gold.
Let me just say this, whatever's put before the voters needs to be factual. So if that's one of the problems Mr. Barnes has, I'm all in favor to make whatever said factual.
And I would just like to add that the report that comes out from the state, they are releasing a new report within like 2 weeks with updated numbers on the medical marijuana. So these numbers are based off of the last snapshot. They call it a snapshot, and that's from fall of 2018, but they are releasing the new one right now.
The new snapshot came out yesterday or the day before today, and that's the numbers I referred to this morning. Curry County in October had 330 medical patients and 143 grow sites. As of the end of January of this year, Curry County is down to 285 patients and 125 grow sites. So we've lost over 14% of our patients and 14% of our grow sites in the last 3 months. On the medical side only. On the way it's going, the program will peter itself out within the next 18 months, and then your income source is gone. So,
Okay. Any further comments? Roll.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Where are we?
Jay.
All right, strategic planning proposal. Jay, Ms. Schmelzer.
Okay, we've discussed strategic planning, the possibility of doing a strategic plan at a workshop. I have it in the packet. I have the information for you about strategic planning, some examples for you to look at, and then a draft RFP in there. If we do want to proceed with it, then we would want to have legal look at the RFP, make sure it's legal, send it out for bids, see how much it would cost, and then have further discussions on whether or not we would want to accept any of those bids, give us an idea of the type of grants that we're going to have to apply for. But this is basically the first step is to, if we decide to move forward with it, would be to put the RFP out there and look for people interested in doing it, what they could provide for us, and what it would cost.
Well, I, as you know, have been very strong on this issue. We were provided a strategic plan that was done in 2009, I believe, but that strategic plan was only for law enforcement. The district attorney's office had found that on one of his shelves, and Sheriff Ward brought it to me. I think we need to look for a strategic plan for the entire county, and I know we're already up against the wall on for our budget season this year, that we're probably not going to get this done before then, but at least we can get a direction. And with this, by putting an RFP out, we can go ahead and get some bids, so I would be for that. Commissioner Gold.
I was glad to see that there's going to be an RFP on this, because I think whoever we get to do the strategic plan needs to be experienced in this area. We can't afford to have inexperience doing this for us.
And I'd like to say one more thing. The strategic plan that was done in 2009, and I'm not blaming anyone, but it was $70 or $90,000. I don't remember the number. It was done and shelved, never used, never opened.
That would, yeah.
That's pretty aggravating for me. Commissioner Gold?
Let me just say I've been through a number of strategic plans at the port when I was working as a commissioner there. Most of them, with the exception of the last one, were shelved, and the last one was very, very helpful, and the manager went by that strategic plan to do the planning, and I think that's extremely important. Otherwise, it's just a waste of money.
And I'll let the citizens know of this county, we will open the strategic plan and use it. It will not be money poorly spent. Commissioner Boyce.
I believe you. Thank you.
So, we need to, do I have a motion to, well, I'll make the motion that we move forward with this and get this sent over for an RFP for legal.
I'll second that.
Further discussion? Question, or roll call?
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, placing an advisory question on the May ballot. Ms. Schmelzer?
So this was an idea that was suggested when Mr. DeYoung was here to see, basically ask our voters the non-binding question of whether or not they would support taxing marijuana to fund law enforcement.
I think it would be a wise thing to do. I'd like to hear from the citizens of the county. So putting a question, and what would the question read? Do you have an example of the question?
So Commissioner DeYoung did give us an example of when he was here. However, I would say that with an amendment coming up, we should make it reflect whatever the amended bill reads.
Okay. I would make that motion.
I'll second it.
Any further discussion? Roll.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Commissioner Gold.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, being up against the time that we are, lunchtime, I think we're going to need to come back after lunch on this. We've got some things that still might take a little bit of time, and although it shouldn't drag out too long, I would like to say that it'll be long enough that to be properly heard let's plan on coming back at 1 o'clock. Committee orders, commissioner updates, and then we've got an other. Number 9 is an other, which is a principal subject anticipated to be considered. So we are in recess till 1 o'clock.
So if you tell Andy hi, will he remember me, you think? Tell him. He gave you a thumbs up.
I always wait till the moment that, when it changes. Give everybody time to get here.
We'll quit directing you.
I think we're ready.
I know, I was just waiting till 1 o'clock, that's all.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I'm using the digital one there behind you, so. All right. We are back on the record here. It is 1 o'clock on Wednesday, February 6th. Moving on to item 6L, committee orders. Julie Schmelzer, Director of County Operations.
So we discussed at a workshop the fact that I was reviewing the committees and I was going to try and have some information for you. I apologize for the late packet edition, but some people had requested to see something in writing, so I put my notes in writing for you. What I've done is I've looked at 16 committees so far, and I broke them down into ones that need orders versus ones that need appointments or special action, and thought we'd start with the ones that need orders. So Brookings Airport Advisory Committee, we no longer have the airport, so my recommendation is that that committee be dissolved. The Building Codes Appeal Board, I had on the draft order for us to dissolve. Legal had some questions on that today, so we'll remove that from the order if you're okay with it. There was the Citizen Budget Advisory Committee, which is an old form, an old committee that we've never revisited or kept active. There's the County Real Property Task Force. They haven't met, I think it was 2016, so that one's on the order to dissolve. There's the Early Learning and Youth Education Prevention. That one, they had terms expire in 2015, and there have been no reappointments or meetings after that, so that one's on the list to dissolve. And then the PEG Task Force, which was formed in 2015 for a very short time, but never, and there was an order creating it, but never an order dissolving it. So I do have a draft order in front of you asking for those committees to be dissolved. Like I said, I would like you to support that and do an amendment on the one that said had Building Codes Appeal Board being dissolved, and we'll just postpone that one to a later date. So approve the order with that.
Okay, that's just the ones you just mentioned, no other than the Building Codes Appeal Board that we're going to pull.
Right.
Okay.
And then there's, so the other one that under the order list that needs discussion is what to do with the Budget Committee. In looking at that, we have that there's 2 people from the central area and no one is representing the north, and we're supposed to have somebody on that committee representing the north. So that one resolution was, an order was drafted on that one, recommending that that be dissolved as well, and I believe that JJ gave you a copy of that.
And then we also have number 9, the LIPSIC appointments. You didn't mention that one in the earlier one.
So under those orders, yes, I can address number 5, 6, 9, and 11. I'll start with number 5. So by statute, we are required to have a citizen involvement committee.
Right.
And all 3 appointments expire in June. One of the things I noticed is that Citizen Involvement Committee was supposed to do a survey back in 2014, and they never did. I don't think that they're very active, so I actually reached out to the planning director to see if she would be okay with us combining that with the plan commission. I've seen that before where you actually combine the two together. So that is a question I have. And then there is some questions on the planning commission too. I know that downstairs they have a different understanding of who's on that committee than what we have orders for. So we need to get that clarified and then bring that back to you for cleanup. As far as lipstick, we are required by statute to have that one too. So I have reached out to staff in the sheriff's office just for some direction on that, asking them, you know, about the appointments, and I'll follow up on that. The CCH advisory board, the name changed, and I reached out to Ken Duquet to see if he would be okay with us proceeding with an order to change that, so I'm waiting for a response on that. And I believe that is it for those 11 under the orders.
So what I prefer we do is let's deal with these on different motions.
Okay.
So how about the ones dissolving the committee, the first committees you spoke of, the airport committee, the board...
Building codes.
Not the building codes one, we're pulling that one.
Whoops, excuse me.
To a later date.
So what ones were on the first ones you discussed, number one?
So the first order would have Brookings Airport Advisory Committee, which is number 1. Citizens Budget Advisory Committee, which is number 4.
3.
4.
No, I'm sorry, you're right.
4.
I'm looking at two different lists here.
County Real Property Task Force, which is number 7.
Can I ask one question on that? Sure. That real property tax force, were they the ones that went out and identified all the properties in Curry County and suggested a use for them?
Sort of. So at first there was a group that was called, I think, the Natural Resources Committee maybe. They went out and looked at them for the natural resource value, these properties for that value. And then there was this County Real Property Task Force that took that data and then made recommendations to the board on what to do with all 900 parcels. And the board actually did discuss and decide what to do with those properties. That was the last meeting I was to in 2016, and I'll be following up with what that board had recommended on those.
Yeah, I was just curious whether that information was going to be used, because some of the ideas that you had discussed earlier, like last meeting, would definitely need that information, I would think.
Oh, absolutely, and I did pull the file, and I have that information, and I'll be relying on that as we move forward with discussions on
Okay, so you don't think that committee is necessary to continue?
Well, they haven't met since 2016, and a lot of those members are gone, so if we want to reestablish that committee, we could, and we'd want to do new appointments too, since it's different.
So would you see a value in doing that? Because I would assume the county has gotten more property since then?
I think at some point I think it would be good to have them look at the new properties we've acquired. The board back then did take action on those other properties, so we'll be bringing those back, you know, to you for further action on them. But if the board's okay with that, I'd like to work through those 900 and then look at reestablishing that to come through the new ones that came on board.
And I would think that you want to review those uses, because if what you said at the last meeting, according to my understanding, I would think you would want to review those.
You mean the ones that were designated for park?
However the board decided on those.
Well, I think we came up with a list. There was a list provided several years ago. I think you actually populated that list, and nothing was ever done with it. So I'd like to revisit those properties first, and let's find the best use for those properties, whether they remain county-owned or we use them for leveraging other issues and needs for the county. I'd like to look at that list first.
Sure, and I can start bringing those forward in groups again for us to revisit what happened with them. But I think that task force that was at that time, Commissioner, they haven't met since 2016. So
would you suggest just dissolving it or revisiting it later in case you want to?
I think we would want to dissolve it, because I think we're going to have a different direction for them.
Okay.
I agree with that. You know, once we find the direction. Yeah. I think once we find the direction, then it'll probably be broader than it was before. Then we can go ahead and appoint a new committee for that.
Okay, that's fine. I just wanted to get some clarification.
All right, and then we had number 8 was on that as well?
Early learning, number 8, and then number 10, which was the PEG task force.
Okay, so I'll make the motion that we are, for number 1, number 4, number 7, number 8, and number 10 on the committee review PDF that I have here that Ms. Schmelzer has provided to us, that we are to dissolve these committees. Do I have
Second, Mr. Chair.
I have a second. Any further discussion? Roll call.
Commissioner Gold.
Yes.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Yes.
Chair Pash.
Yes.
Carried unanimously.
So then the other one under the orders, as I mentioned, was the Budget Committee, and you do have a resolution before you that talks about dissolving that one and starting over with that to try and get somebody to represent the North.
Commissioner Gold.
I'm kind of having a problem with that because we already have our budget committee established, and it feels like if we don't agree with them, we're trying to get rid of them. That's my feeling.
Commissioner Boyce.
Yeah, this caught me a little bit off guard, but I've thought about it. I voted for all these people, but we do have a regional problem with the whole thing, and so I would say resolve the committee, and I would encourage all 3 of those budget committee members to reapply, and we'll start over. We'll get our schedule going back. No hard feelings whatsoever, but certainly nothing personal or lack of appreciation for the job they've done, but I think it's a clean way to start, and it's part of this whole process of moving forward.
Commissioner Gold.
There's another problem with that. These are staggered terms, and if you put them all at once, then you're going to have a learning curve. So,
Well, if you read the proposal that Council has provided us, they start out as new staggered terms as well.
Yeah.
They have different expirations. The first one would be 1 year. The second one, which would be North County, would be the first one. Central County would be 2 years. South County would be 3, and then from that point on, there would be 3 years each on re-election or reappointment. My question on this is that it is the history of this county to have a voice from North, Central, and South. I don't have an issue with any of the people on the Budget Committee. Actually, the only ruling that has been ruled since I've sat here was in my favor. So I have no issue with anyone on the Budget Committee. I think it is imperative, though, that we treat every citizen in this county fairly, and that the North County has an equal voice in every part of the budget process of this county. So therefore, I would say that I would probably lean toward dissolving the Budget Committee. And I would, of course, thank everyone on the Budget Committee for their service to this county. And I would echo Mr. Boyce's comment that they all reapply. And of course, we would not be able to seat 2 of the 3 that are in Central County, but we would, of course, look to seat 1 of them if their names were on the list to reapply.
I have another
Commissioner
question.
Gold?
What is defined as north? I mean, exactly what is the line?
I believe it is the Arizona Beach line is the 1/3. There was a geographical map that was pulled up on Google Earth, and it was right near, I'm not going to say exactly, but it was right near the Arizona Beach. Muscle Creek
Yes.
was the North County line.
So that's the farthest south. Okay.
So we are way, I think it's 7.9 miles is the first Budget Committee officer, which would be Mr. Ostrowski. He is 3-point-some miles from Mr. King's location, and I think he's 7.8 or 9 miles from the Muscle Creek. So it's definitely, if it were a mile or so away, I mean, we could maybe fudge that line a little bit, but due to the distance, I just feel it's absolutely necessary that North County have a voice in our budget process. Commissioner Boyce.
Just picture school districts. That is the official lines that separate the 3 sections of the county. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And if we do not have reappointments or those people coming back and reapplying, I would certainly let everyone in the county know We are looking for qualified people to be on our budget committee. That's going to be starting relatively soon. We can easily give you the timelines for your necessary participation, and we can get you the appropriate information to get you up to speed on where we are in the budget process for the year. I see two questions. I'm going to take the one in the back first. Ms. Rowe, if you'd step up to the microphone, please.
I vaguely remember that nobody from North County applied. Does anybody else remember that?
Is that a no, that is accurate, or no, it's
Two
not?
people did apply. I can't say his name, the former mayor of Port Orford, Jim Auburn, and then another citizen named Ed Conyers, which you encouraged him to submit an application, Commissioner Boyce.
Yes, thank you.
And that's what I've heard as well. We had applications, but they were disregarded, and Central County was chosen over that.
Okay, so what if you don't have any from the North County?
Well, we could, in an immediate situation, if we don't get it filled, we could operate with 5. I mean, we still have a quorum, and it would be legal for us to do that. It would not be my choice. I have had several people reach out to me since I've been seated from North County with an interest to be on the budget committee. So I don't think we're going to have a lack of interest.
Okay, thanks.
You were next, Ms. Kolstrom.
Well, she's walking up there, Mr. Chair, just quickly. I'm sincere in asking the present budget committee members to reapply.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Louise Kallstrom, County Accountant. I was going to ask the same question if you didn't get somebody to apply from one of the locations, be it South, Central, or North County, what would be the process at that point? And then my second, more of a comment, I believe that we have trying to remember what day, because I don't have my schedule in front of me, but we do have a work session on the direction for the budget, and although that is a commissioner's meeting, I think usually budget committee members do attend that meeting to hear the direction, and it's, I believe, in March. So I was wondering what the timeline was for getting the word out, getting the applications in, and getting those committee members appointed, because it's probably less than 4 weeks before we would really like to have those selections.
Well, on your first question, I'll defer to council, but the ORS that I read said that if you have a vacancy on that board, that the board, as long as it carries a quorum, can still operate until that vacancy is filled. Am I correct on that? Okay, and the second part of the question is, I would hope that our newspapers in their next issue have their headline stating budget committee members needed for North, Central, and South County having an equal voice. And I, of course, would never tell our newspapers what to write about that, but I would hope that is the headline. And I would also, again, encourage, we already have two, Mr. Rhodes in South County, and we had Mr. Ostrowski and Mr. King here. There's been other interest from other individuals in this county to be involved. So I don't think we'll have a shortage. I just think it needs to be noted that this is something that we need to fill as quickly as possible with the right people, and I hope that they would move as quickly as they can to get their applications in if they are interested. It's just, for me, it's imperative. I believe that Mr. Boyce, and I haven't spoken with to Commissioner Gold about this, but Mr. Boyce has made himself vocal that he thinks the county needs to be represented equally as well. So I would hope that Council or Commissioner Gold feels the same way with this, and we can get it filled quickly.
Okay. I just wanted to have a comment about Curry County. I was with school districts for 17 years, and we begged them to apply to be on the budget committee. We were lucky to even get an application. I commend Curry County because the people that are willing to be involved with their county and volunteer the many hours that it takes to be a budget committee member. I really commend that you have such choices in this county, and I think that's fabulous. So.
As do I. I think I've said moments ago, you know, I'm very pleased with the commission that we had, and I hope they all reapply so that we have that available to us. Mr. Barnes, did you have a comment?
Yeah, just real quickly, this has come up before, and the road department also recognizes the three areas of the county, puts it at the Muscle Creek line, and there's other places. I believe there's another one of the government bodies that serves that says north, central, and south, and also specifies it. So it is well delineated in county history that those are the three separating lines.
Okay. So do we have a motion? I'll make a motion that we dissolve the current budget committee and have reapplications for a new budget committee to be seated for the 1920 budget cycle.
Second, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion? Roll.
Commissioner Gold.
No.
Vice Chair Boyce.
Aye.
Chair Pash.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Okay, so moving on then, under appointments needed, we have the ambulance committee.
One second. One second. On the, don't we still have to deal with the other committees?
So we did in order dissolving the ones we could.
Right, that's 1, 4, 7, 8, and 10, but we still have 3 we're going to bring back.
3 we're going to bring back.
How about 5?
5 and 11 I want to work with planning director on.
Gotcha. Okay.
And then the other one, I'm waiting to hear back from law enforcement.
All right, thank you. I just wanted to make sure we were clear on the record.
And then the ones that, looking through the files, the ones that need appointments, we have that the ambulance committee. They need a representative from law enforcement, so I've reached out to the sheriff's office on that. Border Coast Regional Airport Authority, Commissioner Posh, you've been appointed to that, but that does require an alternate. So I've reached out to the city of Brookings, since they now have the airport in that area, to see if they would be an alternate. And then with the Mountain Drive Special Road District, we had an issue where we had 2 people appointed from the same district, and then that was cleaned up. But now, bottom line is there's a vacancy there. So we asked one of the members who I think believes they're still on there if they would like to be reappointed, and also I ran the ad in the paper, or JJ was running an ad in the paper on that one.
Okay.
4-H under special action needed, we have the 4-H and extension service. We have an IGA for educational services with OSU extension, and I'm going to reach out to Frank Burris to ask him about that because it is expired. So I want to make sure that we have a current IGA for education services. And then with the Fair Board, those members by statute are supposed to be bonded, and we're also supposed to have an MOU with them. So I did reach out to Nikki from the Fair, and she said that their board did recently approve an MOU in January, and she would be forwarding it for us to bring back for discussion. And then we're going emailing back and forth regarding some legal things regarding the bonding. But
that is mandated. That's mandated though, on the board, right? To be bonded.
It's mandated by statute.
That's what I thought.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So those will eventually be coming back to you. There are some other committees I was made aware of that we don't even have files on, so I need to research those. And then just 2 notes is to keep in mind when we are looking at these is we're supposed to, when somebody is on multiple committees, 3 or more, we're supposed to give preference to people that are not on a lot of committees. And then the other thing is we are supposed to have staff assigned to each committee to make sure minutes are filed with the county and that the county is kept in the loop of what's being discussed by these committees.
Yeah, in the AOC meetings I went to a couple of weeks ago up at Oregon State, I kind of questioned some of the, there's a lot of budget issues up there for the extension office here, and the failures, it's not staffed all the time, and I was hopeful to have the local staff here from the extension office get with us because we need to make sure that we're getting the reports on that and the 4-H reports as well on that. So.
And I know that there are some 4-H reports, or there have been in the past, but I can ask them about that too for an update if the board would like that.
Okay, great. Commissioner Boyce.
Thank you. Like a presentation, updated?
If you'd like.
Yeah, I think that might be good call.
All right. Well, it looks like next thing on the list is commissioner comments. And JJ's put me first on the list. My comments are, I'd like to comment about the newspapers. And I would like to, first of all, applaud you for being here and taking an active role again in Curry County's government and these proceedings. I would never try and tread on the First Amendment rights, but I think some of the things that are done, and I spoke privately with Ms. Stebbins about it a while ago, we're trying to heal this county and trying to move it forward again. And some of the newspaper article headlines that have been posted in the papers, one in particular, Commissioner Pash asks for a $56,000 a year raise, and Commissioner Boyce asked for a $20,000 a year raise. That was the headline, and not that commissioner salaries were looking to be restored to historic levels. And this wasn't with your paper, sir. It was with another paper. I would just hope that the local papers would, and I'm thrilled to see that they do take an active role in the county. I would just hope that the headlines and some of the language in the articles would not be divisive, but would be truthful. And I also offer to all the newspapers in Curry County as well as statewide, if they would like, and news sources, Ms. Smelzer is willing to do a weekly press release from everything discussed at these board meetings and or any workshops, and the headway or decisions that were made from those. If newspapers would like to just publish that the way it is, or pick and choose, but I'm sure that many of you in the county have heard many complaints in the last couple of years of inaccuracies in articles, and I won't name any newspaper or the articles anything more than to say I would hope that people would look to the facts and working harder to that and not hyperbole. Uh-oh. I stirred the pot. Yes, sir.
Matt Hall, Curry County Reporter. Not my paper.
I didn't say it was your paper, sir. And
we should be a little bit more specific. I mean, these are a lot of... I try to settle things. I don't stir things up. I don't try to sell newspapers through Harper Boyle. We don't have a sweater girl on page 2 either. But no, not our papers. Not this way. The problems with the pilot also has problems. Western Communications has problems. We're delighted to work with you. As far as self-reporting with Ms. Schmolzer, she could probably do a better job of it, I am sure, than I could. I would love to read her reports, but we still have to be around.
Oh, absolutely. And again, I applaud you for being here. I thank you for being here.
Well, and yeah, regarding that, had some family issues, things that really did need to be taken care of for a period of time. And somebody left a key here.
That's why I did say that I spoke with Ms. Stebbins personally about it before the lunch break. That's why that was my reference to that. And again, I'm not picking on the pilot paper. I'm
totally willing to let you. I can't do it myself either, but I'm willing to let you.
All right, those are my comments. Commissioner Boyce.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On my Save Oregon Forest letter, I forgot or failed to mention that I had got a very nice email. In fact, I forgot to respond, I just realized, from former Brookings Mayor Ron Hedenskog, and that again is on my Save Oregon letter, that we're apparently going to review some additional. Anyway, Mr. Hedenskog said, great letter on forest management and more. I, for one, would vote on council to endorse it, meaning he does, as you know, still sit on the Brookings City Council. I believe Mayor Popoff would likely also support those respective governments, along with a county resolution to endorse. It could carry some weight back to Washington, D.C. you know, I have no interest in going to Washington, D.C., but I've heard you have offered to pay your own way on working towards PILT payments. I've worked very hard on that. To have you offer to take the lead and pay your own way, I think that is just, I'm not a bit surprised, but it leads me to what I want to offer. Just seeing you work, and some of the adversity, just the going back and forth to Josephine County and fulfilling your obligations there, and the effort you've made, Director Smelser, is just really a breath of fresh air. I appreciate also, Mr. Pass, you bringing up the salary thing. The people out there that are unaware of the work that we do from a full-time basis, and the load that we knew we were getting into when we signed up, and to have you clarify that there's been no pay raises for commissioners since 2014. In fact, since 2010. They did get a little bit of a raise in 2014 to the 66, but that was because they were paying their own purse, or a good portion of it. I don't know exactly what the math formula there is. So there's been no commissioner raises since then. Again, basically since 2010. Which brings me to another point, and that's a $42 meal per diem allowance for travel. As you know, I've turned in 4 or 5 meals in 2 years, and they've been McDonald's type meals, with 1 or 2 exceptions. And so I want to review that at some point in time to make that dramatically less. We may get some kickback on that from people that do travel a lot, but I think that's exorbitant, and I don't think we can afford it. Building fees, I've been asked to wait till we can get the time to, you know, the additional fee increases that were finalized back in December, and that is an issue with me. What can the community afford? What can the taxpayers afford to subsidize? And I know we have a little bit of a flurry of activity down there, and we have some new people that are handling it well or not so well. It just depends. I mean, I think we need to be aware of down that, and I'd asked Council Huddle to consider going down and spending a little bit of time down there, along with Community Development Director Smelser, and which, by the way, we are also being accused of spending a lot of money. And I just want to say, are you kidding me? That's laughable. She's doing the work of 2 people. She needs some assistance. She's working on those issues. We're recruiting some very good people. And as you've heard me say, I anticipate and expect the building department, the community development department, to be the pride of our county at some point. And I don't know if Councilor Huddle believes that's his role, but he would be with the legal background, and also with the 2-3 years he's worked for this county and his efforts in the planning aspect, he's done some very good work. So I'm going to be nudging him and recruiting him, and to the extent that Director Smelser wants to authorize that, and things change daily down there, and so we'll just see what happens. But we all need to be a little bit focused on that part of our operation right now. There's some good things happening. There's some efficiencies that we're working on, ways to save money, and that's all I have for today.
Commissioner Gold?
I have a report that I'd like to present. I met with the Dr. Doug Bunn, Dean of SWAC, and since I'm the liaison for education, I feel it's important to get out and see what in the heck's going on. And so I spent quite a bit of time with him. We talked about some of the things that are instituted at the college, and one of the things that I think is really great is the dual credit programs. And this is college credits that are earned in high school. In my opinion, it's much better than the AP program because it's not just based on one test. It's just like a college course for the students to get credit, and they can get all of their basic credits that they need, their general education credits, before they attend a four-year university. So the Brookings High School has 173 students enrolled, and this was in the CNA program, math, science, Photoshop, and digital design. And some of the students are juniors when they actually get their CNAs, and then they can go out into the community and work part-time or maybe full-time during the summer as a CNA, and then move on to get the job experience they need to go into the RN program. Gold Beach has 39 students enrolled, and he told me that the welding manufacturing class is really great. They have some really high-tech machines. Pacific High School in Port Orford is limited at this time in scope. So then he talked about the nursing program / CNA. This is their greatest strength. Squebec, this is the outfit out of Coos Bay, is giving fellowships for the CNA instructors. My computer kept making this CAN instead of CNA, so I apologize for that typo. To help recruit and retain the best possible instructors. And I think this is really important, because what happens is a lot of times these people come, they go, you get them trained, and it's very difficult to keep a program going when there's so many changes. Right now there's 5 slots for the RN program every other year, so they're working presently for giving 5 slots every year. And this is kind of hard because the people in the RN program have to get practical experience. They have to go to the hospitals. Right now they're just working with Curry General. And Curry General, I don't know whether you know it or not, their census is right around 7 average for the whole year. So having 5 students getting their practical education there is kind of hard. They're trying to work on getting Sutter to be in a program also, but because it's over the state line, that's kind of difficult. Also, Good Sam in Brookings pays tuition for the CNA program if students commit to work for them for 2 years. And I was trying to ask him about scholarship programs, that sort of thing, to encourage students to stay here in the county. Also, online courses are offered. The digital design program is a 1-year program with full enrollment right now. And other online courses are available on the main campus in Coos Bay. Other courses, I just looked through their catalog, and they send this out, a mailing 4 times a year. So this is one way of getting the information out about their courses. They have an EMT course, art courses, basic academic courses, math, science, Spanish, etc., exercise courses, yoga, Tai Chi, all kinds of things. And a good thing I notice is seniors over 65 receive free tuition for auditing classes. So if anybody's over 65, go take a class. And they do have good publicity. As I said, the catalog's sent out 4 times a year. There's radio ads, and they have a table at the Curry County Fair each year. Also, on the back of this paper, I participated in a regional solutions meeting, and I just wanted to inform you of some of the projects that are happening in Curry County. The Azalea Park has upgraded the baseball field. That's with funds that were provided by Regional Solution. And also the cannery at the Port of Port Orford was in major disrepair, and it's receiving money to expand and replace the building to support the port activities. And other projects in Coos and Douglas counties were also discussed. And that's my report.
Can I ask you, did they mention, I've been told that they've canceled some of their curricular activity. Some was for lack of, they said lack of enrollment. Some was for lack of teachers. Mm-hmm. But I've also heard that they've basically cut back and or terminated a couple of teachers as well from there. And did they explain why?
It would depend on the subject and the demand for those teachers. And that's what happens.
Do you think it would be possible that we could set up possibly a workshop with them and
I'm sure
some
he'd be
educators
amenable to that.
And some educators in the community that we could all have a workshop and talk about it?
If we were going to have a workshop, I would suggest getting people from the high school, all 3 areas.
Absolutely.
And SWAC, because that is a huge, as far as I'm concerned, a huge plus. Those high school students getting those college credits for attending classes.
100% appreciated, and again, the vocational aspect that they do as well.
Yeah, that's a big thing in Brookings right now, the vocational. There was nothing when I first started as a school board there. The previous school board had just nixed the whole programs, and they're doing a lot in those areas.
That was the same here at the high school. They stopped it for a while. They've reinstituted it now. I still do some of it with the program that we have at my place, but I think a workshop on this would be great, and we could have some of the local educators, some of the high school people, SWAC here, and just kind of talk about the direction of the college, and just making sure that everyone's fully informed of what they do, and getting more information out to the public, and getting more information in from the public to make sure that that we're getting the most from their resource.
Okay. Commissioner Gold, can you help with the contacts on that for the workshop?
Yeah, I will do some contacting. If we come up with a date, I will contact the individuals and take care of it.
Thank you. I think we have one more item on there. I see council has joined us.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thanks for recognizing me. I'm in my grubbies today because I'm packing up boxes, moving
I
the
thought that was
office.
your Sunday stuff there.
Technically, it is my Sunday stuff.
I got him blushing.
And my assistant came over as I was working on the boxing and stuff like that. She said Commissioner Boyce's report mentioned something about work and planning. I'm not really sure what that's all about.
Well, we had a conversation this morning, so I asked you about it, and my position hasn't changed. That
okay.
So, did you hear anything I had to say?
Well, sure, but
I mean, not this morning, but when I just presented to the board through
no, I
Commissioner
really
comments.
didn't. I really didn't.
Commissioner or Chair Posh, this involves so the workload down in the planning department, and I would prefer we actually put it on as an agenda item so the planning director could be here to be part of the conversation as well.
I think you are the planning director.
No, I'm not. I'm the community development director.
Thank
Becky
you.
Crockett is
Got
our
it.
planning director.
Okay, good.
But I would prefer she be part of the conversation.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
All right, we have one more. The ORS 192-640 notice shall include a list of principal subjects anticipated to be considered at a meeting.
So that would be if we had anything else or anything urgent that we weren't able to put on the agenda. Nothing's been brought to my attention.
Okay. Then at this time, this meeting is adjourned.